The Game Awards happened. Well, hello and welcome to Triangle Square, the PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me for a special episode, I think is what we'll probably call this, is Mr. Chris Figs. Chris, work has been hell. Life has been hell to various degrees for both of us. I think a little more for you than me. So how about we take this opportunity to do something that we don't usually do, and we're going to do an episode dedicated to one topic and one topic only, and that is the Game Awards. So, first and foremost, if you're new to the show and this is your first episode, wild episode to come in on, but hey, welcome. We are a gaming podcast who looks at the industry through the lens of being primarily fans of PlayStation, though we play when and where we need to, where our interests lie, be it PC, Switch, Xbox, though as we've been saying, it's increasingly easier to do so on one platform than it's ever been, for better or worse. So today, we are going to be talking about the Game Awards and kind of sharing the things that we thought it did well, our feelings over the show and in general, the way it was paced. But by primarily, I think, if we're being honest what it is, or at least with ourselves, I don't think there's as much for us to worry about with the awards. I think the way that I like to say that is I'm passively interested in the awards, kind of like I'm passively interested in the Wrapped that all companies do. That I'm like, I know what music I listen to. I don't need you to tell me what I listen to. I know. But, it's still interesting to see, but it's not something I die for or care if something is wrong. So to that end, we'll probably talk a little bit about the awards, but I feel pretty confident in saying that I know what I enjoyed most this year, and regardless of what anyone else says, I have my game of the year, and Chris has his, and I'm hoping you have yours. And it's cool when something you loved gets that kind of notoriety and whatnot. But I think for the most part, if everyone took a second to be honest with themselves, we're watching for the reveals. So we're going to be talking a lot about the reveals. We'll talk about anything else as we see fit. You may notice, if you're a longtime listener, that originally the plan for this episode was to be our games of 2025. Kind of not really an award, but a way for us to kind of unpack the things that we played that we loved this year.
We called it what? The games we played in 2025, not the games of 2025.
Yeah, and that includes some games that released in 2025, some that didn't. But with things that are going on in personal life, like my kid's got a show that the school's been working for. She's been doing practice and stuff that's in the evening when we normally record. Sounds like Chris's schedule's hell anyway. So we thought this is a good way for us to pop in something that is timely and of the milieu at the moment, talking about the Game Awards and everything that was in it. And it will act as a kind of interstitial episode so that we can give ourselves 2 more weeks to get lined up schedule-wise, do another episode, and it will make it the genuine last episode of the year, which I think is a better fit for games that we played in 2025, as well as giving me and Chris just a little more time to play some of the things that came out this year. So I've already started out on that, and I can't wait to talk more about some of the things I've been playing and I'm about to play. But that is for next episode. So join us then where we will talk about that. But Chris.
Hey, Brett.
Are you ready to talk about the Game Awards?
Yes.
One sip later. All right. So I think the first thing I kind of want to do, Chris, is before we start getting into the actual meat of what we saw, I think that the Game Awards has kind of been in this thing where I feel like they have been trying to trial and error, which, I mean, the Game Awards has been trial and error since day one, right? Do you remember the early days when they kept having like Paris and the eardrummers backwards? I can't ever say that. Ray Sumred or whatever.
Ray Shremmond.
Yeah, they had all those people coming in and doing the musical numbers like it was like the Super Bowl. And that didn't last because it just doesn't work with what the event is trying to be. So I'd say that a lot of the Game Awards in the last few years has really been solved. But the thing that seems to be a moving target, and I can't tell if it's because of trying to minimize/maximize with both how much money they can make from different partners and different advertisements versus the amount of things they have to reveal versus not. But I feel like the one moving target that this show has had going on is figuring out how to pace it and have it not feel too long or too short. I feel like the length has been back and forth. Do you feel like you agree with that?
I think it's a little long, but I think that's okay. You know, kind of what it pretends to be deserves that kind of runtime, if you get what I'm saying. You know? Sure.
But in the words of Joseph Ferris, fuck the Oscars.
Fuck the Oscars for sure.
But what were you saying?
No, I just think that I don't know. While I agree with you in a sense of like who gives a shit about the awards, like I think we're kind of at a point where it does matter. It is for all intents and purposes, it's like it is the gaming Oscars. But whereas like for us, like the people who watch it, like that is important.
Yeah, I agree.
And the DICE Awards are like the real awards, I guess, if you want to call them that. But like because that's the Oscars. This is like the Kids' Choice Awards. Actually, that's a much more apt comparison for what this is. But
I think that's the important thing on my side, right? Is like when I think about it, like, look, I love movies. I'm clearly not as much of a movie snob as I am a game snob in terms of how important that is as a form of entertainment in my life. But I feel the same way about the Oscars. I mean, I don't really need. It's hard to describe. I guess I don't need a show like a show like that to validate the games that I enjoyed. I prefer getting validation by seeing other people enjoy things that I enjoyed. And sometimes, of course, you can get more validation out of seeing someone enjoy something that you enjoyed that you feel like didn't get as much attention, not necessarily in a show standpoint, like a showcase or like a reward ceremony, but really just with the general audience of gamers. Because I guess for me, that's what I think about, right? When I think about what's important with games, I think about how it resonates with the gamers. And so when I see something like, The Order is one of the games I bring up all the time. Of course, it's nice when someone's like, hey, I played The Order and I really liked it. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Because I know that game didn't get shit for awards, but that game got a lot of criticism. Some very do, some not so much do. And so it's interesting to see that. And so I guess to some degree, the Game Awards can act like that for people who maybe feel like Blueprints didn't get enough, recognition, who feel like Sonic 3, the movie, got snubbed for not even getting nominated for Best Adaptation, even though arguably it's
Until Dawn. Actually, I'm sorry. I haven't even seen Sonic 3. I watched Until Dawn. The fact that they even put those words on paper is fucking crazy. Like if you didn't have enough movies, just nominate one less if you're not going to give it to Sonic, because Until Dawn was fucking horrible. But I will give it some credit. It was horrible enough that I paused it on my iPad and put it on the TV to watch it like in all its glory. So I'll give it that. But crazy to have Until Dawn up there.
Yeah. So with all that in mind, I guess what I'm saying is like I do appreciate it, and I don't really. I don't, of course, intend to step on anybody who does view this with a lot of respect and attention, because I think to some degree it does deserve it. And I do think for new studios like Sandfall, I think the feeling of getting something like this is much more important. And I think that this is probably the best case scenario for an award show like this, to give a very big platform to somebody who is new on the scene and doesn't have as much of a platform. So it can act as that. But, if we're talking about From Software winning Game of the Year over and over and over again, every time they put something out or being highly nominated and winning a lot, it's still great to see them get the award. It's still great to see the teams get some form of recognition, even though most of the time it's just the main creator. One of the cool things about Sandfall this time around was they also brought basically the entire team with them, so that everybody had that sense of like, hey, we're here, we did this thing and it did well, and we can afford to bring everybody in the team here to enjoy this moment together, which is bittersweet. It's so this Game Awards in particular is actually an interesting way to show how the Game Awards can be important. But I think generally speaking, I don't live or die based off of what they say, because, and this might be, we've talked about this quite a bit when it comes to game reviews, right? I think a lot of it is, even though I know that they disclose who the panel of judges is to some degree, I don't actually know the people who are making this decision and making this call. So for them to say that something is the best carries very little weight with me. What do I care that this, unnamed panel of, you're not outwardly putting it out. This unnamed group of people is just determining what's best. I mean, that's fine. But it doesn't have as much weight because I don't know what their opinion is, or I don't value their opinion in the same way as I would just going, oh, hey, Skill Up put a video out and I care about what he has to say because of the long-term relationship I've built with that channel. Do you kind of get what I'm saying? Yeah.
I mean, I think I agree with you, but I think the thing with this, especially now that I feel like, and we'll talk about the trailers, but I feel like we're at a point with like the caliber of what's there, and just the caliber of Jeff Keighley and the event in general, where it's like, it's your perspective is a healthy one, to be clear. Like, yeah, none of this matters to what you liked, right? Like, none of it does. But I think what where the point we're reaching with the Game Awards is that when From Software announces a game and 4-time Game of the Year winner means something, right? Like I don't think these, to me, like these are not shows for, in a lot of ways Jeff Keighley is the most powerful person in video games, because like what his show does is it writes history. I know that sounds really fucking corny when you say it out loud, but it does, right? It's like Overwatch will always be a Game of the Year winning game, right? Sekiro will always be a Game of the Year winning game. Clair Obscur will always have that. So Sandfall will always have one-time Game of the Year winner until the next time, which means people will see that at the beginning of a trailer and go, "Oh, I gotta sit up." In the same way as just like creators of The Witcher 3, creators of Grand Theft Auto, it's almost like when Dan Houser goes up there, when Jeff is kind of like shadow dropping the surprise of Dan Houser, which second you say GTA 3, we all know who the fuck's coming out. But like when you hear, oh, we have a very special guest who doesn't come out very much. He's the writer and director of GTA 3, San Andreas. Like it's that same level, but in a studio sense, right? Where it's like Sandfall will always have that, which I think is good for an indie studio, right? From Software will have that 3-4 times, and we're in the infancy of seeing like Best Picture, that level, because that does, again, like to your personal tastes, like I like Tokyo Drift, right? So like, I'm sorry, you can miss me with, I don't know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I think it's a good movie. I don't know why I said that, but
yeah,
the point I'm making is like,
point. But yeah, Tokyo Drift rips, and I don't need Blake's bad opinion to try and act like mine's wrong.
Right. I also don't need the Oscars opinion to tell me that, I don't know, Midsummer is better than Tokyo Drift, because I like Midsummer more. But I'm more willing to like pay attention to a Nolan or a Scorsese or a Tarantino or even an Eggers or a fucking Coogler. All these people who I know are making movies that have been nominated for Best Picture, nominated for Best Director, or like I'm gonna go see a Leonardo DiCaprio movie because it's Leonardo DiCaprio, but he is now a best actor winner. So I think, to me, like, one of the reasons I have some issues with the awards, and especially the fan voted ones, is that like these do like codify history for all of these studios. So like when something like Wuthering Waves, which I haven't played it, like don't come at me, but like when something like that is winning, and as like a viewer, they gave out skins and characters to vote. Right. So then that means less.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like I think personal taste wise, you're an unhealthy person if, Clair Obscur winning over Donkey Kong made you super fucking angry and you were making reaction videos and all this kind of stuff. If you're doing Smash JT type work, like I understand that you're crazy, like, because your perspective is the healthy one. But I think when you're looking at like what this all means, right, you don't have to take it seriously, but like history does. I know how corny that sounds. I hope you get what I'm saying.
I do, but and one of the things that I want to play, maybe not devil's advocate so much as I just want to kind of poke at this with a stick a little bit, because a lot of what you're saying I get, and I kind of think it lands in a way where I mostly agree with you, but I am kind of having a hard time wanting to say, while I think that there's a version or a microcosm of what you're saying that should be correct, or maybe even is correct at some scale. Sure. I think part of what gets weird about that is whether or not we want to admit it or not. I feel like the industry itself, the gaming industry, doesn't actually treat the Game Awards with the amount of gravitas that you're giving it when you're talking about it this way, even though I think in an ideal situation it would. Because like, right, you say like, when you look at it and you go, oh, Oscar nominated, right, for something that has a different thing. But you're talking about, oh, that's a Game of the Year winner. And you're right. Sandfall will always have the fact that they were a Game of the Year winner, but Donkey Kong Bonanza is going to win Game of the Year for some other outlet. And guess what? in the marketing, in the grand marketing scheme, you don't have to win the Game Awards Game of the Year to get a Game of the Year edition. Think back to when the Game Awards wasn't even really much of a thing yet, and it was still coming up in its early infancy. We still had Game of the Year versions. We still have Batman Arkham Asylum Game of the Year version, and Arkham City Game of the Year version, and Fallout Game of the Year version. And Fallout didn't win a Game of the Year and at the Game Awards, or even the Spike Awards that used to happen for that. And so what I'm kind of getting at is that in a way, I feel like you're right, and maybe we're approaching it and we're seeing somewhat of the zenith of that. But right now, I still feel like we're in a weird spot where the industry fights that a little bit with the fact that if they get a nomination from anyone, even if you just want to call it marketing, at the end of the day, marketing is still a big way that the gaming industry is perceived by the consumers. And it being a Game Award Game of the Year doesn't necessarily carry any more weight for the Game of the Year edition than it being a IGN Game of the Year. You know what I mean? Like, they're still going to do a Game of the Year edition. So I'm not even saying it's a big deal. It's just, I think it's a little easier for me to be a little nonchalant about it, because I still feel like ultimately the industry is more nonchalant about it than they should be, given that a lot of people do carry a lot of, I do find it important.
I don't think the industry treats it as nonchalant. The journalists
I wouldn't say nonchalant, but I'm saying more nonchalant.
Divinity was announced there. Naughty Dog announced their game there. The industry very much takes the Game Awards seriously. That doesn't mean they're not going to use a marketing beat for it, but like, just think about this. Like,
well, I guess that's kind of what I mean, right? Sometimes marketing goes against, which this is something we talk about all the time too. There's the casual versus the hardcore audience. I think you're right. On the hardcore audience side, I think it's more respected. But Game of the Year still means something to a lot of the more casual people who, they're just looking for whatever points they can get. It's not really a nail worth hammering down over and over again, so much as it was just an interesting thought that I don't feel like it's quite at that level yet, but you're still right to say that it's clearly working to get to that level. And I think it's clear to say that Jeff puts a lot of work in. However you feel about Jeff doesn't really matter. I think if you look at the end product of what he's doing, he is trying very hard to give gaming something that does carry that weight in the same way. And it doesn't just happen overnight. The Academy didn't literally happen overnight, even though that was a different industry, different times, different expectations, different markets. So
the last thing I'll say is, like, ironically, the comparison I used with DICE in the game and Nickelodeon, right?
Yeah, Kids' Choice Awards. Yeah.
I think it kind of flips back in the reverse, right? Where it's like, we have an IGN Game of the Year award. It's like, cool, you got slimed on Nick TV. And it's like, we got a TGA, and it's like, okay, you got an Oscar. And I think,
or at least close enough, the closest thing we have to it. Yeah.
Sure. And I think that's the thing, is like, the reason that all 33 people and the dog from Sandfall were at the Game Awards is because it's important. They came from France.
Agreed.
Fucking Kojima's there. He's a fucking bajillionaire crazy person. But sure, he's there, So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's not that important, but I do put some emphasis on it, which is why I have a problem with one of the awards that was given out. But we'll talk about that.
that'll be interesting to get into. Well, look, before we actually start getting into the things, why don't we just keep going on the bulk of the things that were actually, because this is the thing. It's called the Game Awards, and maybe I'm a bit, I wouldn't say strongly jaded, but maybe I'm a little jaded for the fact that I posited a little bit exacerbated, like I exaggerated it, but to some degree, I really do think the majority of people tune in for the reveals, and then the awards are just there. And I think that the show, again, this is another thing where I'll talk about maybe it's working toward there, but I don't think it helps that they give half of the awards away just as little quick throwaways between trailers. They're like, here was 3 minutes of one game. We're going to give you 30 seconds to talk about what game was the best of this category. Oh, it's this one. Now the next reveal. And it's like, you don't even give a shit about your own award enough to give it 5 minutes. And I'm not saying they should, because that would make an already long show too long. But then that's one of the things, is when your brand is the Game Awards, yes, you are technically awarding people, but more than half of your show is dedicated to announcing things that are in the industry. And I don't even hate that, because the reality is those are the things that are going to be at future Game Awards, hopefully. And
that's the thing, I don't want to see fucking Chody or whatever that guy was come up and talk about his streaming award. I don't give a shit. I do want to see like Game of the Year, Best Direction. I think That's the one thing I'll give Jeff is that he does know what's the important ones that we should see.
The ones that have the weight that people would actually like to hear what has to be said in regards to it.
Which is why I will say you could tell that Microsoft spent, and I'm not accusing them of buying an award. Let me finish my fucking you could tell Microsoft paid for a bit of a spot with that accessibility award, not because they needed it, but because there's no fucking reason they should have been making a speech about that, except that they announced that it was coming to PlayStation 5 next year at the end of their speech.
Yeah.
Accessibility is important, but that one to me was like,
it is, for sure.
That would have been on the side any other year, but Microsoft had an announcement to make.
I'm very excited about that because actually I think that game looks really cool, and I was debating playing it on PC just to try and play it, because one of the other things that we're going to talk about in a little bit is kind of in this, do I have to fucking play it on PC to play it? Because I sold my Xbox, so I can't play it on Xbox if I wanted to now. It's gone.
Yeah. That was, I think I said in our Discord, which you can join at the link below, was that it looks like a fantastic $24.99 get the platinum and never think about it again game.
I'm a little, because I do think the game looks really cool, but one of the things I'll say about Contrast, or Composer, I think is actually the name of the studio, that Contrast was their first game. Contrast was one of those games where I was like, this looks so cool. And We Happy Few looks so cool. And I think what I've learned is they have a really, really, Compulsion, thank you. They have a really good eye for art style. Yeah. They actually, you know what they really remind me of? They remind me of a non-horror version of what I used to think of Bloober Team. And Bloober Team has thankfully changed my opinion on that, because I think they've grown as a studio. I think Bloober's always had a really good eye for art, and I think that they've had a struggle with figuring out how to mix that with compelling storytelling and compelling gameplay. And therefore, you see a game like The Medium and you're like, that looks kind of fucking cool. And then you play The Medium and it's not awful, but it's not great. And so you end up in this spot where it's like, I wouldn't say that The Medium is a bad game, but I also wouldn't tell anybody to rush and play it, because it's better to look at than it is to experience in any other way. It just looks good. And that's kind of what Layers of Fear is. Again, Layers of Fear isn't awful, but the other aspects aren't reaching the level that I feel like the art direction is in that regard. And I feel like that's what Compulsion's been doing one after another. So my hope was that this is the first time that they really have a great art style in presentation form, and they can finally mix it with something that's a little bit more interesting. I'm not saying We Happy Few is bad, but I still think ultimately the visual styling of that game is what sold everybody on it, because that's what every time someone talks about that game, it's really primarily about how cool does that game look, and it does. It looks incredible, but that's depends on how you feel about the game. So, Chris, before we move along, I mean, we can go through some of the things, but it sounds like you have an award in particular that you feel like should have went a different way. So, since the awards mean a little bit less to me, I do have one topic that was brought up in our friends group today that I was like, I'm curious as to what other people think of that as well, that we can get to. But let's start with your award. So, what award do you think didn't quite go the way that you feel like should have?
I didn't expect this game to win anything. I've been very clear about that. I will be vindicated. I will be vindicated in a couple of years when the YouTube essays start coming out. I'm fine with that outcome. But Claire Obscure winning Best RPG over Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is fucking outrageous. That is outrageous.
So, Chris, I have a difficult question to ask you, because it's going to take a little bit of digging to get there. Maybe this is a little bit better saved for when we start truly talking about what we played in the next episode. But you're saying that pretty strongly, and I know that you absolutely adore what Kingdom Come did, and I know that it's one of your biggest games, and I know you beat it, and you're very, very up to date and knowledgeable on what that game does from an RPG standpoint. That said, you didn't beat Claire Obscure. I'm not saying that completely diminishes your opinion, but why do you feel so confident in saying that when I know that you didn't beat both of them? You got maybe
I'm in Celine. I got 30 hours into Claire Obscure. Like, I'm not
I couldn't remember where you cut off.
I don't want to have a fucking debate about this.
No, we don't have to. I'm just I'm not even really pushing for it.
I'm just putting I didn't mean it in a negative way. I apologize. It sounded meaner than I meant it to.
Yeah.
Claire Obscure is not an RPG.
Do you think Persona is an RPG?
No, not really.
But you're fine.
I would argue it is significantly more of an RPG
if you think that's
what
true.
I think it is than Claire Obscure.
You think
because at
that,
least in Persona, you're playing what does RPG stand for?
role-playing game.
You cannot play 6 roles. At least in Persona, you're playing one role. You're a role playing. I don't know. I'm not trying to have a whole philosophy. I just don't.
I feel like that's a bit pedantic because I think it's a little disingenuous to say you're playing one role.
Of course it's pedantic. We're talking about the Game Awards.
Because, okay, look, if we're being real, and I don't want to say too much from a spoiler standpoint, but in Claire, you're only ever really, outside of a couple of really like one specific moment, you are always playing one role at a time, and it's shifting what role is important for the story for each section. I think that you played enough of it to know that. With that in mind, I think that it's a little disingenuous to look at a game like that and go, well, you're still playing as all the characters in Persona. You're still playing as yellow-haired boy and yellow-haired girl. I don't remember any of their fucking names.
You're not switching between them to walk around. But like, of course.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. You get what I'm saying? Like,
it does to me.
in terms of the only thing that you can actually do, right? If we're talking about playing a role, the only role that the game allows you to do, and this is like my opinion on there, but I think when Clair Obscur has you do anything that actually fills the role of playing a role is when you're making dialogue choices and choices between which characters you want to interact with in certain ways. You're only ever doing that with one character for that act.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too crazy on defining RPG because I think like thinking about it, like, yeah, sure, Persona's probably an RPG. Claire has RPG elements, but like even what I've played of it, to me it's an action adventure linear game, but it has a JRPG battle system. That's how I see it, and that doesn't make it a bad thing. And you could argue it has role playing elements, sure. But like, there is no more role playing game than Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
What I would say to just kind of wrap up my opinion on this, and I don't feel the need to push much more because I'm not even saying you're wrong, but I say from my perspective, when I look at a game like Clair Obscur, I think it's pretty difficult from my viewpoint to look at a game like Clair Obscur and call it not an RPG. And I'm not saying you mean that in a pejorative sense, but just in you're saying classifyingly, like the way that you would classify it, you don't classify it as an RPG first and foremost. No. Is that a fair way to put it? So with that in mind, I think that for me, I think it'd be very difficult on my side to look at Clair Obscur and say that it's not an RPG, but then turn around and call Final Fantasy 1 or 2 or 3 an RPG or even 6 an RPG, because at the end of the day, they're doing the same thing with just a different visual styling. And I don't mean that to pejorative, but for me, I know that I consider the classic Final Fantasy games as RPGs. And I look at this and I think that they're similar enough that for me, I think that I mentally have to put Clair Obscur in the RPG category.
Is Uncharted 4 an RPG?
No.
What's the difference?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What's the difference?
What's the difference between?
I mean, like, is there something
Uncharted
specific
plays?
You want to? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Uncharted plays the same as Clair Obscur. You traverse an open world, and then you get to combat, and then you finish combat. The only difference between those two games is the type of combat.
So there's in Clair, right? Again, I assume that what you're, and I don't mean this disparagingly, but I assume that what you're kind of doing is like reductio ad absurdum, right? It's like trying to find something that is so for me, I think that if I was going to look at that and compare it, I'd say that Uncharted doesn't have character builds. You don't get to determine who is in your party to synergize with someone else in your party. You don't get to choose what things are equipped to them skill-wise or gear-wise and how it can shape your play style. You don't get to make dialogue choices with them that do have impacts on how certain characters do or don't feel about you or interact with you, or further choose to deepen or not deepen a relationship with characters because it is just a movie that you're playing. So
Uncharted's a bad example. I have two more questions, sure. But let me ask. Doom 2016, is that an RPG?
Doom, just so I'll make sure I heard you correct. Doom 2016?
It does everything you just mentioned. Every single thing you mentioned, it does. It's character builds.
Party member?
Of course not, but you don't in Witcher 3, so I don't really think that makes an RPG.
Yeah. Fair. I mean, I'm not, but I think so. We're actually getting into what I think is an interesting question, which is what are the flavors of RPG, right?
Because Doom, by your definition, is an RPG, which means everything is an RPG.
No, I don't mean that.
Doom has character builds. Just you can max them out,
okay,
sure.
But
Chris, as you're playing through Doom,
but if we want to do that
character.
route, you said, what do you do in a role playing game? You play a role. Well, guess what? You play in every single game. You play a character, and you play the role of that character. So every game is an RPG by yours.
100%. I agree with you.
Okay.
So then the last question, then we can move on because it's really not that important. We're just bitching, and I'm a little drunk.
One of us.
I said me. Would you say, okay, and this is a fantasy scenario, but say somebody just came off Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I know you haven't played it, but just what you know of it.
Sure.
We both played The Witcher 3. If someone came off The Witcher 3 and was like, I'm looking for this experience, would you tell them to play Clair Obscur?
No, but that's primarily down to, hold on. That's primarily down to real-time combat versus turn-based. That is, I think, the largest factor in what I think. And to your credit, sometimes games can be turn-based and immediately get called RPGs. And I would say that turn-based combat is a staple of RPGs. So games can utilize that system, but not have the rest of the depth. And it's just a turn-based system without any of the rest of the RPG elements. But that's kind of what I got into with the Witcher thing, and where I think you're right. The Witcher is, of course, one of the, if we want to go back to all the variations, the flavors, right? You can do something that's like an overarching big enough change that someone feels the need to add a word into it, right? Kind of like how you have metal, but then you have heavy metal, but then you have new metal. Well, someone goes, action, a role-playing game where you're primarily doing a bunch of real-time combat is very action-focused. We're going to call that an action RPG. And I agree with you that is not normally an aspect of there. But then the game, you look at the rest of it and you go, okay, well, while the combat chooses to primarily portray itself in an action-filled manner, then we go, what else does it have, right? And then from that, I would go, okay, it has deep world building and storytelling, a world in which you can choose how to freely explore it. There are character relationships that you can choose to dig more or less into. There are side quests that further build the world up and down. And again, none of these things as a one of them suddenly makes your game an RPG. But I think once you have enough of them, it's very okay to go, yeah, enough of the meat on the bones of this game is an RPG for me to classify it that way. But I think I'd be hard-pressed to something like your point. I'd be hard-pressed to call God of War 2018 an RPG. And to that degree,
I'm not
a
even
lot
being
of people...
funny. High on Life is an RPG by these definitions. They even have a party.
I haven't played it, so I really don't know. But one more example of what I think could be interesting. Give me just a second. Where was I?
I guess while you're trying to figure it out, I can say my final point. I think you could take someone who played Avowed and give them Kingdom Come in the Outer Worlds. I think that's the same for all of those games. But I don't think if you took someone who played Avowed, Kingdom Come, or the Outer Worlds 2 and gave them Clair Obscur and especially Monster Hunter, you would make that person happy. But you could give them any combination of Avowed, Kingdom Come, and the Outer Worlds 2, and they're probably fine. Yeah, you could quibble about swords versus guns or whatever,
sure.
But base level, they're getting the same fundamental experiences from those three games, and you're getting something completely different from Clair. And Monster Hunter is an even more egregious fucking inclusion in this category than Clair is. But it didn't win.
I agree with you.
But it didn't win. So whatever.
Yeah.
That's like, I think my point is like, when I look at the genre and I look at the thing, like, yeah, I said some insane shit. Like Persona 5 is obviously an RPG. But like the base level of my point is you look at those three games, those you could all give to the same person and they would have varying levels of quality, but the same type of experience that they're getting from one through and through.
Now
and
you're saying for the three,
get that from
just
Clair.
So I understand, you're saying that you're going back to your three example of,
it's just the three
Kingdom Come, Outer Worlds,
and Avowed.
You're cool. And part of the reason I say that is, again, I think the biggest reason, and I think a lot of people get hung up on this, is, and I'm not saying this is your thing, but I still think the biggest reason that someone would look at that and go, wait a minute, what, is because of the turn-based nature of it. It's just a very different way to play a game. And as me, someone who is usually, I wouldn't say super averse, but I'm not as immediately drawn into turn-based as I once was in my life. And so I don't see turn-based and go, oh boy. but I don't see turn-based and go 100% It's just there's more of a, I'd say it requires a bit more of a push. Like I think somebody was like, well, you didn't play Persona 5 with its turn-based. I was like, no. I didn't play Persona 5 because I knew it was 110 hours minimum. That's why I didn't play it. It had nothing to do. The turn-based didn't help the situation. That was just like, well, the game that I don't want to play because it's way too long is also turn-based. So that's just one more thing to add to the list of why might I not want to play it. But I didn't look at Clear Obscure and immediately go, oh, I don't want to play that. But I did go, the turn-based may not be a way to pull me into it. But, I guess the last thing I'll say, and then we can really move on, is a lot of people have a similar opinion about Final Fantasy 16. And I agree. I don't think Final Fantasy 16 is purporting to be an RPG. It just happens to be an entry in a series that has more often than not been an RPG. But I don't think it's an RPG.
It's an MMO.
So it's a Devil May Cry MMO, if you want to call it, if anything. Which, again, I love that game, but I'm not worried about it being an RPG. But I think I might be on a similar hill as you, honestly speaking. And this is maybe a better comparison because of the fact that we don't get into the how does the fact that you're changing the gameplay to turn-based change things. I think your thing where you're like, okay, say you take, also I haven't played Avowed, so I don't know if I want to, I actually was like, is Avowed an RPG? That was a legit question, not me saying it is or isn't. It struck me as an action game.
I liked it. It was.
With RPG components. But to that end, let's say for a better comparison, Tainted Grail, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, The Outer Worlds, and then the fourth game is suddenly, let's just pretend it released this year and it was up there with it. Then we go Final Fantasy 16. I think if you give Final Fantasy 16 to the person who loves these other three games, I don't think it's obvious that they will be like, oh hell yeah, unless they just happen to also like action games. You know what I'm saying? But I think if you looked at that, I don't think that they would look at that and be like, this is the same type of game as these other three games. I agree with you if that were the thing. I just think Claire is, can I at least get this out of curiosity? You played Final Fantasy 16 and got the platinum. Mm-hmm. Is Claire more of an RPG than Final Fantasy 16?
Yeah.
That's crazy to me, but that's okay, Chris. All right, man. Are you ready to move on?
Like,
I don't want to deplatform you.
I'm trying to think of an answer because, like,
the fact that you're struggling tells me a lot. And again, not that you're right or wrong, but from my sensibility as to what it is, I think it's crazy that you can't go, obviously it is.
But again, that's my perspective. So,
that's why I said more. If we're imagining it as a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And we're imagining it as a spectrum, and on this end is Block Breaker, and on this end is fucking
sure.
I don't know, the most RPG game of all time.
Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
We can use Kingdom Come. Okay. On a scale of Block Breaker to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, is Clair Obscur closer to KCD 2 than Final Fantasy 16?
I think Final Fantasy 16 and Clair Obscur are like, if we were standing single file, they'd be back to back. So I would say Clair Obscur is in front of Final Fantasy 16, but it's next in line of not being an RPG. So
that's wild, but it is an answer, and I appreciate the answer. All right, man. Well, before we jump out of the awards, and we've gone a little longer than I thought we would, but that's okay because I think we'll go through the award stuff. And honestly, I'm surprised. This is a conversation I didn't think we'd have, but I've enjoyed it. Something that was brought up in our friend group was this idea of one of our friends said that he felt like if a game was obviously going to win Game of the Year, which bold choice of word, but he said if a game was nominated for Game of the Year and it was obvious that it was going to win, then even if it qualifies for certain other categories, it shouldn't be included so that other things can get more recognition and platforming. And I kind of thought that was crazy because
it's batshit.
Divorce it from any game connected to this. All I said is you make a game and your game fits 9 categories and your game is truly the best in all 9 of those categories. Why should you not be eligible to be nominated and even win all those categories if what you made is truthfully the best? And I'll tell you, just so that we can kind of, because it does add a layer to it. Mm-hmm. One of the things he felt, the first thing he said is that Clair Obscur is not an indie. And I think this is something that's common. Clair Obscur is an independent game.
And I had to an indie game.
And he's like, no, it's AA. I said, there can be AAA independent games. That's what Baldur's Gate was.
Baldur's Gate
3 is a AAA independent game. And he's like, but it had a publisher. I'm like, I am aware of that. But the studio is not owned and beheld to a publisher. And it didn't exist only because of the publisher. They wanted to make a game. They pitched a game. And then they went. It's not like Helldivers 1 is a good example of Helldivers 1 is an independent game by an independent studio. Sony then were like, do you want to make more Helldivers? So I would say that even though technically Helldivers 2 is an independent game by an independent studio, it was made with Sony in mind from the beginning.
Well, Sony
and so I think it's exactly.
So it can't be an indie game.
But Kepler also, again, pushed funding into Clair Obscur. So you can go that, but that's where I had to go into it with him. And so he was saying that he felt like since it was nominated for all these other categories, Clair Obscur, and he felt like even after I talked to him, I was like, dude, it's an independent game. It's just you don't realize, because it's very rare that a AA or AAA game is made by a truly independent studio anymore, because almost every studio has been bought. Yeah. That you just don't realize that indie is not about budget. And so we got past that, and then he started saying, well, that game is clearly going to win Game of the Year. It might win RPG, blah, blah. So he felt like one of the examples was maybe don't include it in Best Independent Game. That way something like Blueprints can get its fair share, fair shake. And, how do you feel about that? Sounds like initially you kind of gave it the horseshit thing, but thinking a little bit more with a little bit more information, you can use the games as reference points to give your opinion there. But I think broadly speaking, how do you feel about the idea that a game should not be allowed to be nominated into too many categories?
Well, I mean, I don't think it makes sense, but I think one of the big problems that I have is like, and we can go back to my thing. Like, I don't think Clair Obscur should have been nominated for Best RPG. But once it's in that category, nothing else can win. I think that's might be the only problem I have with the way the Game Award works. And I think I feel like for some reason it's less so in other industries. But if Clair Obscur is the game of the year, it by logic cannot lose any other category. It doesn't. That wouldn't make sense.
I don't know that I agree with that, because I think. And I'm going to throw out there, I mean, Game of the Year is essentially Best Picture.
Let me narrow it down.
Like, actually, we've been talking about the Oscars.
Yeah.
But I think you can have Best Picture and still not have Best set design or best graphic design or whatever it be.
I mean,
because it's like the sum of its.
But
sure. But point being is that you can still be the best game without necessarily, because it's like, I think we'd all say, right, like Clair Obscur has fantastic art direction, but if there was a category that was specifically like realism in graphics, it's not going to win that, because it's just not what it's going for. It's going for something different.
Yeah, I think I would narrow it down a little bit more to like best indie, best RPG, even though I disagree, right? Once it's in the categories of best in class like that, it's got to win.
It's hard for it to
it doesn't make sense that it would lose that. How do you lose best indie but win Game of the Year? That doesn't track.
I kind of get it, but like you said, I think it's more of a structural problem to how it goes down. But so conversely, one of the interesting things about the Game Awards is that indie games have won Game of the Year before.
Yeah, Claire just did. My thing is like, I don't know.
So it's weird because I get what you mean, but it's interesting that it can't. It's like it works more in one direction than it does in the other, just because of how it's structured.
If you were going to take the Game of the Year nominees out of anything, I think it would be stuff like best indie, best RPG, best genre. Right? But I don't think that's fair either, because then you have to ban everyone nominated, which means where Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 should have gotten its shine, it's now ineligible to get its shine. That's part of what annoys me about it.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So just so anyone who doesn't, so you're saying that if what you're saying happened, and because KCD2 had been nominated for Game of the Year, it couldn't therefore then be nominated for RPG, which is a more obvious win in your opinion, that's a disservice to the game.
Right, exactly.
And I agree with that. Yeah,
so
I think
have to
not letting something be nominated. Yeah,
because
it was just an interesting thing to hear. And I know that his opinion on this was largely based around the fact that he's he's super into playing independent games. He plays mostly on PC, which is where the vast majority of independent games come from. So to that end,
Blueprints, but like it's not better than Clair Obscur. And I didn't beat Clair Obscur. But it's not better than that. So like, I think that's the thing where like when I'm looking at best RPG, which is why I'm annoyed that it won that category, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 wins that category because it is the best RPG. But I'm not going to fight you on Game of the Year. It was a losing battle to come in with. This is like fucking Leonidas. But I'm not going to fight you on that. But like, I'll look at something like RPG and be like, no, it shouldn't have won that. And I think that's maybe one of the things I was a little annoyed where it was like, why are we? It was funny because of what you said at the beginning, right? It's like we spent so much time doing these and then throwing stuff to the side. It's like, why did you bother having these guys come up 8 times? Like, why did you waste my time? Jeff knows what's going to win. So like at a certain point, like, why are you calling these people up so that a different French person can go, oh, there's so many people here, mate, and then move on from the fucking, and then why did we do that? Oh, mon ami, there's so many people in the audience. Hello, Hideo. Like, why? I didn't need to see that 8 different times. It was cool. Good for them. Again, happy for you. But like, it was almost a bigger waste of time for me to see them go, whoa, who's going to win this category? Claire Obscura is nominated. Not anybody else. Move on. Like, why?
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to tell Jeff. If you're going to give 9 awards to somebody again, just put them all together. Put them all together and give them a half an hour to talk. Like, that's fine. Do that.
That way I can tune in if I care and I can tune out if I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, it's an interesting thing too. One of the weird things about the Game Awards is that, much like in all forms of entertainment, inevitably something comes up where you're like, I just don't care. Like you were talking about Content Creator of the Year or like Streamer of the Year, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck about any of these people. I don't care.
Yeah, who cares?
And I was looking, I was like, I don't even know who most of these people. I know Moist Critical. That's it. I don't know anybody else in there.
Happy for him. He was great in Dispatch, but it's when I can't get over giving an award to someone's call sign. Like, that's fucking outrageous. Like, imagine like, oh, the Burt Peanut wins, and then this fucking 40-year-old asshole wearing a peanut suit has to go fucking onto the Game Awards. Call the man Craig. Like, I don't want your Burt Peanut.
Well, that's not how you know him.
I don't know these people at all.
Me either, but to be fair, Burnt Peanut has just as little register as Craig Rogers, assuming that's his name. I'm not saying it is.
Burnt Peanut's
but you get my point, though.
Okay, but
that
look,
you can call them by name. I'm still not going to know who the fuck they are.
50 Cent goes by Curtis Jackson when it's fucking important. The Rock
he goes by Curtis 50 Cent Jackson.
True. But The Rock goes by fucking Dwayne.
You're right.
It's important.
Now he also chooses to sometime include The Rock Johnson when he feels it's beneficial.
Yeah, but okay, then fine. How about Curtis Burt Peanut Rodrigo? Fine, that's better than just being like, oh, Chody won the Game Award for best V2. Fuck you.
Yeah,
happy for you.
I choose to hold my opinion on those because, like, okay, ironically, the guy who said the thing about indies, he's into VTubers, and I'm not saying it's a wrong thing. It's just it doesn't register to me at all because I don't care. And
do you, man?
Happy for him, but it's like it's one of those things where I'm like, I know people care about this, but I just don't.
Burnt Peanut's funny. He makes funny TikToks, but I'm just not a streamer person. You're not going to catch me on Twitch unless Marvel Snap is doing drops.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Chris. Well, man, do you feel like you're ready to hop in and talk about the games that were shown?
More ready than I thought I was when we started this. So they got things to say today.
First and foremost, we've been talking kind of about how the show's gone. Quick, and then we'll go into what it is. How did you feel about the actual pacing of this from how often you felt engaged with what was being shown? We talk about state of plays and stuff a lot, right? Those types of events and how sometimes the pacing of them can get into a weird lull, and a well-paced one shows enough stuff consistently enough that even when it's something that doesn't register for you, you don't fall out of it before it shows you something again that might register for you. Do you feel like this succeeded in that, with the, of course, aspect that they had to break here and there to do awards?
It's funny because I think if you look at the A, B, C, D, F scale, I think it started at A, and then the longer the show went on, it started going down. Because for some reason they front loaded it, right? Like we'll talk more about it, but when they announced Divinity at the start, I was like, this is gonna be fucking sick.
Well, like the midway point or whatever you want to call it, but still early. Yeah.
Okay. They announced Fate of the Old Republic early.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you're starting with this, what do you have saved for the end?
Yeah.
And then when we got to the end, I was like, oh my God.
He pulled the Ryan Johnson on us. I said, dude, I think we got to start talking about these games first and foremost.
Yeah.
I will say, to quickly answer on my side, I was impressed by how often, agreed with you though, how often, definitely early, that I was like, dude, I feel like every other game they're showing, I have at least passing. Like it's pulling me in enough to be like, oh. And
I don't mean to delay too much, but I wonder what your opinion on this is. When I heard about how much he was charging, which was like $1 million a minute or something like that for a trailer.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't even know this happened.
That was what Kotaku reported. I was like, that's awesome. Because
dude, do you know how much money Larian just spent for Divinity then? He had to, I'd say he had to cut them a deal. I mean,
I would be willing to bet someone like fucking Larian does not have to pay to get into the Game Awards. Jeff probably is like, please, I'll blow you, Sven. Like, get on my stage. I think you're charging the smaller people. I think that for me, honestly, I think he's more charging for those like interstitial commercials.
Yeah. Sure.
But when I heard that number, I was like, oh, this means the show can like probably only be pretty good,
because it's like premium.
Yeah. Would Sony have shown that Baby Steps trailer at the Game Awards for $1 million a minute? I don't think so.
Probably not. Yeah. Again, assuming that's how that went down. That's interesting to hear though. I'm gonna look up that article. Well, look, let's dive into it. And I want to go ahead. Ironically, my notes are basically in order of how the things were shown. And Chris, I would be remiss if we did not talk about the fact that they immediately came in with Dog Stranding, aka the Free Shepherd.
Dude, that looked good.
It does. And I also am a little upset that no one thought to call it Dog Stranding, because I think they could have gotten away with it.
If we can get Escape from Duck Off, we can definitely get Dog Stranding.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was watching this. I was watching like someone like a group of people live streaming it, and one of the guy goes Vermont slop like as a joke because he was talking. They were telling us where the studio was, and then it pulls up to a shepherd dog, and I was like, "Holy shit! It is Vermont slop." But that looked actually really good. I was not like hyped for that, but I was like, yeah, I'd play that. I'd like to shepherd some dogs.
Same. My thing right now is show me a little bit more, not a lot, little bit more, and give me a price. And if you can hit this matrix where everything comes together within a pretty tight thing, I'm down to try that shit.
I'd be willing to put a bet out there right now that that's a Game Pass or a PS Plus game.
I'd be super down with that. Also, why do the animal-based games keep hitting these services? It's like definitely because PlayStation.
Maybe this is a hot take, and I could very much be wrong. I don't think people would buy that game. I don't think people would have bought Stray either.
I would have 100%. I'll be real. I was so excited
before or after you played it.
Before. But when they first showed it off,
I guess I should be clear.
I was like fuck yeah, dude!
Someone will buy it, but I think it's a lot easier.
I have a lot of disposable income.
Sure, that's fair. That's different.
So I think to your point, maybe it's better to like specify, and I think that's what you mean, right? Is like the average person with not relatively deep pockets to buy the things they want may go 40, 30, whatever it was for Stray, or this. And I think you're right. Maybe that on average, but I also then Stray did really well even once it left PS Plus, from what I understand. So
yeah, I guess I just think like it's a lot easier to find an audience for a game like this where someone can go, yeah, I'll check that out for free.
I think that's fair. And, I don't even mean that in a bad or pejorative way. I kind of think this is kind of a strong type of game for that. And I also think that I would imagine, and I might be wrong, but this seems like this is the studio's, like one of their first games.
Yeah, it's their debut game. Excuse me.
Okay. In that sense, I also don't think it's entirely wrong. I think it's good for everybody. It's good for players to try something that's a little different and a little niche, but also is kind of being cutesy and leveraging that a little bit with what's going on. And I think that's good for Sony to pull people into something like PlayStation Plus, or good for Xbox to pull it into something like Game Pass. And I think it's good for the developer to go, oh, cool. My debut game has a guaranteed profit day one, as long as we got the amount of money, right?
I guess my main point,
good mix, even though I have criticized it before, because ultimately I do want people buying games, but I think there are certain type of games that are a little bit better for this, certainly when they're a bit more experimental.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get a ball and gun gamer to buy the sheep herding game.
Yeah.
But I think if you can get them to play the sheep herding game for free, even then, like, let's be honest, a ball and gun gamer is not playing that. But if that game gets a 10 and is being talked about for Game of the Year and it's free on PS Plus, you might get some people who go, oh, what's Claire Obscure Expedition 33? That's not NBA 2K, but let me give it a try. You know, like, you'll get those people who are like, okay, sure, it's great and it's free and it's on the pass. So I think that's the same thing that's why I think these games go in there pretty well. Either way.
Agreed. All right. I think what's the next thing? I chose the first one. Is there something in particular that stood out to you?
I mean, can we talk about Fate? Because I don't have anything pulled up. So
we can talk about Fate. I think it's a really good one because given a little bit more information, I'm curious to see where you stand on it. What's your initial run on it? From what you do already know, what's your initial run on it?
Honestly, Star Wars slop.
So to that end, I think that we've had this conversation before. You've never actually played KOTOR 1 or 2, correct? So you don't have like a built-in love for the Old Republic games?
Some of KOTOR 1 on like my iPhone or something, but that's it.
Oh yeah, I forgot they did that. Yeah, so and again, I say this with love because those games have not necessarily aged super well because they are early 3D games. I don't think that playing them in 2025 is necessarily the best. I don't know that you can have the same feeling as people who played them when they were brand new, when they were a lot more like, whoa, we haven't seen this. You know what I mean? I do feel like to some degree, I think they are great games. And I was excited for the KOTOR remake to shore up some of the clumsy feeling aspects of the early games, but give all the best parts of it a new area to shine for people to go, oh shit, I can see why people were hyped about this in 2002. You know what I mean? So there's that. But I thought maybe it'd have a little bit more for you because you were a big Mass Effect fan, still are. And Casey Hudson's tied to this. So when you saw that name pop up, was that like an actual cool moment, or did it actually do anything for you? Since
that was the only time I was excited in that trailer.
Interesting, yeah.
Because
do you think that would have changed if there was? I mean, of course, gameplay would have given you more to go off of. But do you think there's a reason for that? But do you think you might have been excited if it was Casey Hudson got you amped, and then they started showing gameplay that might have actually gotten you to move the needle because then you know what it is?
The thing for me is like, I'm just not going to be excited for Star Wars. But if that game comes out and it's good, I'm going to play it. And I'm probably going to love it. You know, you clip me saying I don't care, but when I give it Game of the Year in 2035, when I have my 4 kids running around or whatever, like, sure. But like when I see a lightsaber, it must be how people feel when they see Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. We just go, oh, fuck this. Like, it has to be how some people feel about this. Because I saw her get off that ship and I was like, this is fucking Star Wars. And I checked out.
Yeah.
And then I like saw, I'm like, okay, let me give it a chance. Like, I don't recognize this ship. I think that's where the key Ray was holding goes, but like, I don't know, you know, but so I'm like watching it and then they do the lightsaber thing and I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Cool. But then it does the like directed by Casey Hudson. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That was the only time where I'm like, all right. But I will say, like, because I know of KOTOR, I'm not like a fucking super fan of it.
I think it's fair to say that KOTOR is like a generational game. I mean, like, it's kind of, you know about it even if you've never played it.
I'm more into this than I guess I'll change my original thing because I love shit like Rogue One and that fantastic movie. I think what I'm tired of is Skywalker slop. Let's go with that.
Now we're getting somewhere. So look,
knowing that Old Republic is so far in the past, I'm more willing to try this because Star Wars Outlaws is kind of neat. I haven't played a ton of that, and I hope it's not Skywalker slop. I don't know. But like, I'm super tired of a franchise whose first lines are, in a galaxy far, far away, we only talk about this one dude's family. So I'm more interested in this because I think I said it when Star Wars Eclipse was announced, the Quantic Dream game that's never coming out.
Yeah.
Star Wars is cool as fuck, but the Skywalker shit is boring to me.
Well, it's gotten there, right? Yeah.
They've overplayed it. The second that I'm not going to spoil the movie, the ending of the last movie just annoyed the shit out of me. But then, like, I get hot take.
Me too. By the way,
the only two this is super hot fucking. The only two Star Wars movies I like are Empire and The Last Jedi. So those are the only two I think are any good. So that's how I feel.
Mainline numbered ones, right? Because like you said, you love Rogue One.
Rogue One for sure. Yeah.
So to your point, Chris, I think I'm so glad that you touched on that as someone who's not as much of a Star Wars fan to begin with, because in my notes that I put, this is verbatim. I will do everything that I said because there's also some information I want you to know in here that you may already know, but for anybody else. So I said Star Wars: Fate of the Old Republic is a bold, in all caps, thing to show when the remake for KOTOR has been in such hell. That said, the promise of a modern take on the Old Republic games is still compelling. Casey Hudson being tied to it is conflicting for some, I'm sure, but considering his attachment to the original game and Mass Effect, here's the hoping that people who didn't like what Anthem brought to the table are still willing to give this a go. That said, Star Wars has still been in a window of utilizing the IP arguably too much in recent years. But this being a property that gets to exist outside of the Skywalker saga and its characters that the shows and newer movies refuse to step away from is exciting in and of itself. Unfortunately, couple this with the fact that the studio behind this was apparently formed in July of 25 this year, this might be as much vaporware as KOTOR has ended up being so far. And I know that that's a bit of a exaggeration. I know that KOTOR was literally being made, hit development hell, has started again. But insofar as it's any kind of anywhere close to being a tangible product for anybody, KOTOR is for all intents and purposes vaporware.
Yeah.
The KOTOR remake. And I am pretty fucking bummed. And you know what? We're not going to get super into it right now. We can talk more about it at the end when we start talking about that last thing that was actually shown. I do want to keep this primarily positive. I want to talk about the things that actually did excite me for the most part, and then save just a few times where I felt like this was a interesting choice in a not so good way. I'm excited for this, and I know that some of that is nostalgia fueled, but it's pretty big fucking bummer to feel like there's no way I'm playing this game for at least 5 years. If fucking Housemarque can't make a sequel to Returnal in less than 5 years, we're not getting fucking a new Old Republic game in 5 years. It's not fucking happening.
Do you see Schreier said it's
more
probably
of
PS7?
Yeah, probably fucking PS7. Casey Hudson, it's going to be his fucking final game.
Yeah, probably.
And he's probably going to Jade Raymond this shit. He's probably going to get it going, and it's going to be a third of the way, halfway through development, and then he's going to fucking bounce like he's been doing with every fucking thing. And then the game's just going to sit in limbo.
They did talk about a trilogy.
No fucking way. I would love that, but no way.
Hold on, we're living in a world where CD Projekt Red, the most trustworthy developer
just said
of all
they're going to do a new Witcher thing in 6 years.
6 years? I'm like, okay.
Don't get me wrong. I would love to see that. They're fucking delusional.
This is a tangent, but the thing is, it is possible if gamers were less annoying.
Actually, you know what? I agree.
If we don't have a fucking Kratos gets in the boat the same way conversation with this, we'll be fine. They'll come out.
And honestly, yeah. Even if we can do the other thing,
they have to redo the Ciri swings her sword animation so that Andrew 123!7 on Twitter doesn't complain. It's going to take forever.
Well, I'll also rein it in. Only have the side content be content that adds to the world. And don't worry, Witcher 3 did an excellent job of that. I'm not saying that they will, but my point being is, if you make sure that there's not just an overwhelming amount of content, but rather a good amount of content that all adds something to the game, I think you can do that if I'm being optimistic. I think what they're saying, and this is technically true, it's kind of like how the clock for 6 years doesn't really start until the first game releases. So once The Witcher 4 hits, they have a 6-year window to get the other two games out.
I mean, 3 and 3 is not terrible.
I don't think it is either. And I think it's doable if you focus on what you're doing and you pay it. Let's be real. We still don't fully understand what AI is doing and how it's going to affect even studios that aren't trying to become primarily AI like some people are. I still think AI is going to be a tool in nearly every studio, just like it's a tool in almost every workplace right now. I think it's just a matter of how much and what does it do and how can you utilize that, again, as a tool, not a replacement.
Yeah. So back to the games. Brett, should I give these two games a shot, do you think?
You absolutely should. And actually, dude, it's kind of a bummer you don't have a Series X, because I think both of those actually do have enhanced backwards compatibility.
Yeah, maybe I'll see if I can borrow my brother's and play them.
KOTOR 1 and 2 are both really good, but also just so you know, KOTOR 1 is BioWare, Casey Hudson. KOTOR 2 is not Obsidian. You probably know that.
Obsidian, the big boy. Obsidian is... Make another game that doesn't work.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go my next one. Again, these are basically in order from when they're shown. I don't have a lot to say about this. I'm curious if it landed for you at all, considering that you kind of are in and out. Like you talk about all the time, you love the games, but that doesn't mean you beat every single one of them or stick with them. Decrepit. I don't know if you remember that one. It looks like old Kingsfield style FromSoft, where it was first person kind of dungeon crawlery, but it still carries a lot of the ideas that we saw come to fruition in Demons and Dark Souls. So I'm curious to see how that pans out, but it gave a strong initial impression, and I'm curious to see if it's more of an arcade experience, like a roguelite, or if it intends to have a more campaign in a more traditional sense, like maybe a Bloodborne or a Dark Souls or a Demon Souls, where maybe it's not overt, but it's still there and you're still moving through a series of events to eventually end the game, or if it's going to be more like a Hades, which definitely has a story.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, did you see Decrepit?
I did, but I watched the whole show. I don't necessarily remember it. I'm trying to find it in this.
For lack of a better way, I don't even mean this bad. It's got a little bit of jank to it, which also all From Software games have a little bit of jank to them, if we're being honest. I think it's part of what gives their games a little bit of character. So, yeah, I mean, you can definitely check it out and see what it is, but it's very much like a first-person dungeon crawler style game.
Oh, yes. This looks cool.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think if they show more... I'm not even saying, look, if it's a roguelite, it doesn't mean I'm not going to play it at all. I just think, and we'll talk about this a bit more when we get there with Saros, but Returnal has kind of scared me off of fully 3D roguelites, because I have to know that whoever's making these, for me, I'm not saying they're wrong to make it, but for me to like it, I've got to know that they understand how to make the gameplay loop work. Just because it's suddenly full real-time 3D does not mean that a run should take 5 hours, in my opinion. No, but, please God, no. Again, that's for me. So
I want to be excited for Saros, but that has me so worried about it, man.
Yeah. Oh, look, fuck, you want to go ahead and talk Saros?
No, because I want to talk about... something that lines up a little better. Are you prepared for that new Control game to be a roguelite? Because that's what it looks like.
Fuck it. Look, let's talk Control. So for anybody who knows, it's called Control Resonant, and I see what you mean, but it looks fucking sick. It looks amazing.
Oh, it looks incredible.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Did you roll credits on Control?
No.
I didn't think so, but I wanted to be sure. I couldn't remember. I have a few friends who have not played Control, but played Alan Wake 2, and yeah, so I couldn't remember what you have and haven't. You also haven't played Alan Wake 2 all the way through yet, have you?
Nope. I'm planning those two for next year, I think.
Yeah, dude, you definitely should. I think Control into Alan Wake 2 is going to be a cool experience for you.
Yeah, I might.
Yeah. Because I love Alan Wake 1. Alan Wake 2 works whether you play Control or not. There's just some cool shit if you have.
Yeah, I like that.
It's kind of how I talk about with like Nier Automata and Nier Replicant. If you've played Replicant, when you go to play Automata, there's some cool shit. You don't need it. The game totally works without it, and that's a good thing. You never want your things to feel shoehorned in a way where it's like, which is kind of like, we talked about the Marvel thing. I think a lot of people started getting the feeling like, I have to watch these 5 Marvel things, otherwise the new thing won't make sense. And even if it's not true, the fact that the perception was there is not good for Marvel. And I think in this scenario, it would not be good for this game. So I'll quickly cover what I was going to say. Shifting the sequel to suddenly play as Dylan Faden is a brilliant idea, as it shifts towards a melee-focused gameplay style, as you can see from the gameplay, whereas Control is like a third-person shooter. And that's something that's in stark contrast to Remedy's last few games, where they're all kind of third-person over-the-shoulder shooters. And it also allows you to keep the story and visual flair of the franchise intact without worrying about the potential of the gameplay becoming too familiar that sometimes sequels can fall into, for better and for worse. Across the board, I think this is a real genius. There's a real genius to this move, as I also feel like they chose to forego Control 2 in the name to help people feel okay with onboarding into the series with this game without feeling the weight of needing to play the first. And I would be remiss to say, I think they learned that from the fact that Alan Wake 2, despite being an incredible game, did not necessarily sell as well as I think they anticipated. And I think some of that is no matter what you do, when you put 2 after something, there's always this weight of, oh shit, I didn't play the first one. I don't think I should play this one. And I think calling this Control Resonant lets you go, oh, I've heard of Control, but this doesn't matter. And honestly, it's not going to matter. This is about a character that you meet in one, but this is not necessarily an immediate sequel in a way. You're not playing as Jesse again going, oh, what the fuck's happening? I need to know what happened in the first game. That's brilliant.
Yeah. I think it looks great. It made me interested in playing Control again. I like the concept of the hiss getting out and then taking over the outside world. I will say, kind of crazy to spoil Control, right there. I guess you have to announce the game, but I can tell you as someone who hasn't played Control, but hasn't finished Control, I didn't know that dude was alive. So
not gonna lie, even as somebody who finished the game, I said, oh shit, Dylan's alive.
Oh, okay.
First words out of my mouth, and I just replayed Control not that long ago to get the platinum.
All right.
The PS5 version is platinum. So yeah, do what you will with that information, but I think it looks really good. And man, I got to get Remedy. I was also surprised at the turnaround, but not super. One person was like, I didn't think Control was going to be anytime soon because Alan Wake just came out. And I'm like, yeah, but I was like, Remedy's bigger than anybody thinks they are, or at least the way they handle projects are. Because I was like, they're still working on Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes for Rockstar that we haven't even announced. And they've been working on those for years.
Yeah, that'll be Rockstar.
And they put out what FBC Firebreak or whatever the fuck it's called. So
I mean, they shouldn't have.
Whether or not it's good, and then didn't they have that other game that was like was it X Defiant? What was the other game that they had?
It
wasn't X Defiant. What was it called?
It was an Xbox exclusive military shooter, not X Force. That's a comics thing. Oh fuck, I know it, dude.
I can't believe I can't think of what it's called.
It's this big online shooter in Japan that they brought over here, and they gave it a Remedy single player game, not Arma.
Crossfire X.
That's the one. Crossfire.
Yeah, they did the single player portions of Crossfire X.
Yeah. Not very good, supposedly. I never tried it.
But the point is Remedy stays busy and they're always working on multiple projects. So one of the upsides is that their original stuff tends to be really good. So this bodes well in that particular regard. All right, well, that kind of ended up being mostly me. What do you want to talk about next? You got something else in the pipeline?
Yeah, can we talk about, I want to veer off from video games for a second. That Street Fighter movie looks fucking awesome. I know that people are gonna say it looks bad, but based on the casting, the movie's a comedy, which makes me more into it than I was. Let me be clear. Andrew Schultz as a person sucks, but he is incredible casting for Dan because everyone fucking hates Andrew Schultz.
I think Andrew Schultz is funny, but I don't pay attention to who he is as a man.
I think he's funny. He's fine.
I want to throw that out there. He makes me laugh every time I see anything with him. He cracks me the fuck up. So, and I was like, as soon as I saw him, I was like, in the trailer before he came out on the screen, I was like, was that fucking Andrew Schultz?
Yeah, I remember when that casting got announced, and I thought it was. I think that movie looks awesome because it's not doing what Mortal Kombat is doing, where it's this super serious story. It's like at the end when they're punching the car. I was like, oh, you get it. You kind of get what's going on here. Yeah,
I'll tell you, as somebody who doesn't really give a shit about Street Fighter at all. I mean, that's just the truth. I don't hate it either. They did a Street Fighter movie back in the 90s with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And my brother fucking loves that movie, so I'm very familiar with it. I don't really care for it, but again, I don't Jason Momoa as fucking Braca or whatever you say his name is fucking crazy. That's good casting.
Awesome. Okay. Dude, but 50 Cent as
I don't know. I don't really give a shit. That's all I'm gonna say is I don't, and I don't even mean it in a bad way. I don't care. Because but I agree with you. In the world of what it could be, it's better that they're not trying to make it hyper serious and they're leaning into the fact that Street Fighter is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought David DeCastleman or whatever the fuck how you say his name as Bison, incredible. I have to ask, was it a bit how pissed he looked when Schultz took the mic?
Oh, I was curious because he looked like he was like this motherfucker.
He looked pissed, but it was also like. He's playing Bison, so it kind of made some sense.
A little in character. So look, you're talking about going off. I'm going to go off to the other side of, I do feel like how long that went on, fuck the pacing, in my opinion. I was like, showing the movie, bring the cast out fine, but I felt like they were out there for way too long. And then when they did the award, the people came up, they're just awkwardly standing back there like, we don't know what the fuck to do. I was like, this is poorly done. This is not the way to do this. You did not, but I guess pick your poison. I'm sure there were people that were hyped as fuck to see all these wrestlers and bad actors come out on
I thought
TV
like
or on the
Roman
stream.
Reigns as Akuma is pretty cool. I gotta say,
again, I don't care for wrestling at all.
Neither do I, but I know you know who Roman Reigns is. I do.
I actually don't, but I knew who the Cody dude by look.
Dude,
and
Cody
a little
Rhodes
bit by
always looks like a fucking villain, bro. He always looks like a comic book villain. I get that he's a heel or whatever in wrestling, but he looks evil.
Yeah,
but in a corporate way.
Yeah, I didn't know. So, which you say his name is Roman?
Roman Reigns, yeah.
Was he the other dude that was talking to Cody? That was like dark skinned guy, real tall.
Yep.
He looked like a wrestler. I assumed he was, but
he's very much a wrestler.
Yeah. I haven't watched wrestling since my stepbrother back in the day was really into Rey Mysterio and John Cena.
Dude, Eric Andre is in that movie. Like, it's a fucking comedy, which is so good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
again, I'm not saying I'll never watch it. The fact that it's aiming to be a comedy has a much higher chance that I will watch it. But it's one of those things where since I don't care about it much, and since I don't care about Street Fighter as an IP much, I don't have enough connection. Like, I can still probably enjoy the movie, but I don't think I'll enjoy the things that are going to have people going, oh, it's Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Outside like punching a car, fine, that's an easy joke. They did that in fucking Guacamelee too. I mean, it's...
Well, it's a Guacamelee reference in the Street Fighter movie.
Yeah, true.
When it comes out, I'm going to come down to Texas and we're going to live stream us watching the Street Fighter movie.
There we go.
That's the plan.
There we go. Well, Chris, let's veer back into games for a second.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Pragmata, however you say this.
Okay.
What's your gut feeling on what you've seen so far? Because now we've seen a substantial enough chunk of both the characters, a rough idea. I like to call this is very similar to that Project Eve trailer we got for Stellar Blade early on, where it kind of sets up a rough story and you see a little bit, but you don't have a lot to go off of. You have a little snippet of gameplay, but you're not entirely sure what the gameplay is still, but you kind of have a little bit more to go off of. What's your initial read on this? You're a big Capcom fan, but I feel like a lot of that's a little bit more geared towards, you're a Capcom fan because of Resident Evil. I don't think you're a Resident Evil fan necessarily because of also being a Capcom fan. Do you think that's fair?
No, I don't rep the big C. I guess I still don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's my biggest concern. Like, you could tell me this was anything and I would believe you. I will say this seems like a Mega Man game. I don't know if that's like people getting in my head from podcasts and shit, but doesn't she have a Mega Man blaster at one point in the last trailer? Like, I don't know. If this ended with like them invading, I'm pretty positive there's this moment where she has a Mega Man blaster. But whatever, it's neither here nor there. That's the thing. It looks cool. Like, everything I've seen of it looks like something I'd like to play, but I'm also not entirely sure what the game is.
Yeah. For me, I think it's pleasant to see that it's not another Deep Down, since this is a launch, hey, the PS5's coming out and here's the obligatory Capcom PlayStation reveal game. And Deep
Wasn't
Down,
it exclusive at one point? Am I crazy?
I thought it was too, but maybe it wasn't that it was exclusive. It just got announced exclusively there because, like, if you remember that same showcase, they announced Forspoken, and they went out of their way to be like PlayStation 5 exclusive. They never did that for Pragmata that I recall. I think it was just more that feeling of you're showing it at the reveal, and Deep Down was supposed to be PlayStation exclusive, if I recall. So I think it was just more of that feeling that it was probably going to be. Also, the release date being near is promising that it's not going to shift into that Deep Down questionable territory again. It seems really unlikely. That said, I need to see gameplay demo. Did you see at the end it said gameplay demo coming later? Before I feel truly excited for it, because I don't, like you said, I don't feel like I understand what the game is. And that's not a huge deal because, again, it's coming soon and they're saying there's going to be gameplay. I will feel much more confident and comfortable saying I care about it then. Right now, I don't think it looks bad. I think it's arguable to say like it looks good. I don't think it looks bad. I think it looks fine. But because it's so hard to tell what it is, I don't really know how to feel about it outside of looking at what I'm looking at on it. There's a few parts of it where it just feels a little surreal in a way where I'm like, I don't know that this is real, even though you're telling me it's coming out in April.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I'll give them this. what a trailer should do is they gave you that little bit of a moment between him and her, Diana or whatever, and they're talking. And I at least have the question in my head of what is their dynamic? What is at play here? Is she an android? Is she a person? What is she? What does it matter? And I think the game goes out of your way to kind of make you think that maybe she's not entirely human.
Yeah.
With some of the gameplay things that they're doing, but that also could just be UI fooling you into thinking something. I don't think it looks bad. I'm glad to see Capcom continuing to swing in a lot of wild directions, because ultimately, as much as I love Monster Hunter World, Monster Hunter Wilds just did not land for me. The fact that I didn't care to beat it and I have had zero desire to go back to it, I think speaks volumes. And I feel a little validated in that for the fact that apparently the game is not doing nearly as well as they anticipated, which is ironic because they didn't think World was going to be a big hit, and then World outsold Resident Evil. And it's like, what the fuck's happening?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too much more. I think it looked really cool. I will definitely be interested in playing it. If anything, out of curiosity, because it was at the reveal. So it's like, what? I'm very into, like, not to derail us, but like going back to Star Wars, like something that I'm kind of into how far away it is, because it gives me like this barometer in my life. I don't know if that makes sense to you, where it's like, I very much like one. I was thinking about it today, right? Like, I remember the trailer with Hideo Kojima and I can't remember the guy's name now. When they announced that he was forming his studio and his first game would be
Andrew House.
It would be Andrew House. That's the guy.
Yeah,
would be on PlayStation, and then like now that we're like, his third game is coming soon from that studio. It like gives me this like moment of my life. And I will always remember this podcast talking with you in 25 years when I'm playing Fate of the Old Republic 7. And I'm like, I remember when this was announced, kiddo, someone get me my pills. Like, it's a weird thing, but like, so like a Pragmata, I'm interested just in that. Like, I remember when this was announced kind of thing. And it was so long ago that like, like I remember when Andrew Garfield was announced as Spider-Man kind of thing. Like,
sure, it almost acts as, I guess I get what you mean in the fact that it almost acts as like this thing of like, once it releases, you get to go, what all in my life has happened and changed,
exactly,
and for the better or the worse since this thing has happened. Like, in the time it took them to make Pragmata, what happened in my life?
Right, that's the better way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can we talk about my most hyped game, because it's the only game that it's between the two games. It's the only one that had any gameplay in it. And this might shock you because it's not my type of game, but Bradley the Badger looked fucking awesome, dude.
It's my next game. It's my next game to talk about too. Okay, I got to do a little bit of a gut check with you though, because I think it has super cute and memorable marketing, which is very important. It's a good start. I'm hoping that the more we see of it, the charm of it utilizing the other IP parody stages that they chose to go with.
I'm into it.
And look, I'm cool with that too. But I hope that there's more to the charm and gameplay that leads me to go, oh, that's cool. Because if all it is the parody IP stage thing, it doesn't mean it's a bad game, but I think Astrobot already did that and more, and therefore would have beat it to the punch. And all I'm saying is, from a consistency standpoint, I'm glad to see you excited for this, but I think that you would be, I don't think that you would push against me saying that if that's the primary thing it's leaning on the same thing that you felt Astrobot was leaning on. Do you think that's fair comparison to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on its level of commitment. I will say that.
That's a very good point. Yes. Yeah.
Because I don't think Astrobot commits to the nostalgia nearly as much as that. It looks like it does. In the same way.
I get what you mean. To me, okay, the stages that are at the end of the galaxies in Astrobot, where the entire game changes to act as a play on the world of like the normal stages, no. But the, what is that, 6 or 7 games that they did where would you get to the end of the stage and there's, I don't want to spoil it for people necessarily, but
I get what you're saying.
The ones where it's like,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
That feels like what Bradley the Badger is kind of showing. But my question also is that what the entire game's trying to do? Which is fun, because Goat Simulator 3 does a similar thing where it's just riffing on other games the entire time and making jokes. Like, in Goat Simulator 3, there are goat towers for you to synchronize, riffing on fucking Assassin's Creed.
Do you
At the beginning of the game, no, ironically you don't, but you still have to synchronize them. And whenever you do it, it does the Ubisoft thing of where it pulls the camera back and reveals all the things within an area. And the beginning of the game, you're a goat who gets woke up in the back of a fucking cart being pulled, and it's like, hey, you wake up, and it's riffing on Skyrim, which is good as well. So to that end, I think that there's plenty of room in gaming for that. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I am curious to see, is the whole game trying to utilize that, or is that just an initial marketing pool? Because either way, it's genius. It's smart to do that. But I'm curious if the whole game is going to be built around that parody style thing, or if it's going to be much more around, we're going to have pockets of those levels for fun because we marketed around it, but the game itself is an original title. And the fact that I'm curious to see that is a really good sign. So,
well, I'm guessing it's a lot more than that because Evan Peters is starring in live action segments in the game. So
I'm glad you said that, because I said that looks like Evan Peters, but I couldn't get a good enough feel on it, and there was no one around. And I was like, his face is in the dark, but that looks like fucking Evan Peters.
It was. I just like, there's a lot of it that like I look at and I go, I'm not gonna like this, but then like I saw, what was it, Badgerborn, and I was like, okay, like what are we doing here? And then it was Cyber Badger, and I'm like, I want to see what you're doing. And then it went The Badger of Us, and I'm like, I don't care what you're doing. Like, I'll play it just to see what it does.
Yeah.
The question is whether I finish it.
You are right, though. That is very outside of your wheelhouse. It is an interesting thing for you to be so excited for.
I'm into parody shit. Scary Movie's better than fucking Scream. Sorry to anyone who's going to get mad at me for that one, but I would rather watch Scary Movie. So
I think they're both great. I'll give you that.
Obviously,
Scary Movie is at least as good as Scream is.
Blake is so mad.
I know. But here's the thing. If we're being real about what Scream is even doing, Scream is a parody of horror movies.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that we're just like, Scary Movie is just one more removed from what Scream is already doing. It's just it's kicking the can further down the road. All right.
Toyota, Mitsubishi.
Oh my God. I fucking love the Scary Movie. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So back on the topic of games, I'm going to scooch us back over to something that I'm genuinely a little surprised I'm saying this, but I'm just going to throw it out there for what it is. Going back to Star Wars, utilizing their IP like fucking crazy. Another surprising return of a game style that we've not seen in the world, in that world in particular, is coming back with Galactic Racer, a new take on the pod racer game from the Nintendo 64 days. I'm surprised. I do need to see more, including price, to know how exactly I'll feel on this, or if this is just nostalgia pulling at me in a particular instance or initially. But I'm not going to lie, as I was watching it, I was like grinning and I was like, it's a new fucking pod racer. And if there's one thing, like, don't get me wrong, pod racing is technically part of the the Skywalker saga, but it doesn't have to touch Skywalker at all outside of a nod towards, let me play as Kid Annie. Why the fuck not? That's sick. Other than that,
they'll all be in that game, dude. 1,000%.
Sure, they'll all be in the game, but that's like Battlefront. And I don't mind that Battlefront has Luke and all these people in there, because it's also got stormtroopers and
it's not about them. That's the thing.
No, exactly. It's not wrapped up in them. They're just it's fucking, I'm playing Smash Bros. And I'm playing as Snake. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like Luke Skywalker is a cool character, but I do not care about his barbecued parents. Like, I just don't. I'm sorry.
Oh boy.
It's funny because like maybe this is hypocritical of me, I don't know, but I was super into this, not in a I'm gonna play this way, but because the whole time I was watching it, I was just thinking, now this is pod racing. I'm not making a joke. That was what I was thinking about the whole time, was just that meme. And I'm like, there's some like nice equilibrium here of like, I'm watching it and I'm like,
this is pod racing.
This is pod racing, isn't it? And then I'm like, the meme just starts, this is pod racing. And I'm like, fuck yeah, Jeff. But I will never play this game unless it's free.
I was about to say, you're not as into racing games as I am, and this is a little bit more on the arcadey side, but I'm very excited to see more of this.
This feels like a game that I play for a day because you hit me up and we're like, hey, can you help me get these last trophies? That's
100%. Yeah, that sounds right. Let's scooch over off into something different. Did you have any pull from Bruce Straley's new game, Coven of the Chicken Foot? Bruce Straley, for anyone who doesn't know, being the other half of the duo that made The Last of Us originally.
No, not really. I'm going to be real.
It doesn't strike me as your type of game, and that's why I even approach it that way. But I didn't know if Bruce Straley, like I know you love The Last of Us, and I know you love Uncharted 4, both games that he co-directed. So I didn't know if that kind of got for you, but also I do know you do like Ghibli, and I'm going to see if this at least lands for you, whether or not you have interest in the game. This felt like it's kind of playing in the same realm as like what Ghibli goes for, but doing so in an interactive manner. Do you think that you kind of got that feeling from this at all?
Kind of. I don't know. Like I'm scrolling through the trailer again now, and like it looks cool. I guess like maybe I'm coining the term here, but it just looked like Game Awards bait. You know, where we've got Oscar bait, and this to me felt like I don't. It just felt like, oh, look at our game that's so fun and cool and cutesy, but it just doesn't. It didn't look like something I wanted to play. It looked like something that someone reviewing it for a website will say it's really good, and I'll believe them, and I'll probably check it out and not like it as much, and that's fine. But like it didn't hit me in any type of way other than, oh, it's Bruce Straley's game. Cool, good for him.
Gotcha. Yeah, the whole time I was looking, I was like, oh, Bruce Straley, that's sick. Nice to see him back in the gaming world and not in a Casey Hudson return to AAA style form. I kind of like that he was like, hey, I left Naughty Dog because I was burnt out. And when I finally did come back to the industry, I did so with a little indie game that's like low budget. And I don't mean that in a like, it's cool to see it not be a hyper realistic, super serious, grounded game. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of like that he leaned into the artsy side of things. I do think if you look at the games that I like, this is much more in my side of games. Like, it's much more likely to be up my alley than yours, given the games that we go to. Like, you know, I've recently played Sword of the Sea, The Pathless. You're a Journey fan. You did like Journey, but you know, point being, this is Inside a little Limbo, bit more on that side. And I don't think that as often you are necessarily as excited for those games as I tend to be. But also, we need to see a bit more on this. That's actually the kind of my thing is, I do think it looks cool. And it was kind of cool having that feeling of what I imagine was kind of like when people saw Level 5 announce Ni no Kuni back in the day on PS3, where it's like, oh, it's like what do we do with a Studio Ghibli style story and world, but in a video game where we can interact with the world. So that's kind of cool. And maybe that's too strong of an opinion. I'm not saying it looks literally like Ghibli, but it has this kind of charm and weird world vibe where it's trying to invite you to be like, why does this woman have chicken feet? What is this creature? Yeah. You know, and it's kind of whimsical, but I do need to see more. But the last thing I'll say is it was really exciting for this to be gameplay from Square, like to be seeing gameplay from Square One, because do we talk about Divinity now?
I wasn't even going to bring it up.
That's interesting, because I guess I'll bring it up insofar as it gives my point here. Divinity, not Original Sin 3, but a new entry in the long-running namesake, was really a compelling show, in my opinion, even if just a CGI trailer. Baldur's Gate 3 has really afforded them a level of prestige that did this reveal well. That said, my excitement will rest primarily in what is shown from a gameplay level. Very surprised this wasn't saved for the final reveal, but I'm sure that this year's final thing being an MP shooter felt more exciting to the MP-focused crowd of gamers who always feel the weight of the slot is usually given to single-player games they may not have interest in. My point there is there was an awful lot of games that were shown that even though they kind of gave me a passing interest, I did have to contend with but it's just CG and I don't know what the fuck it is and what it's trying to do. And I think it would have been really unfortunate if they did that with Covenant of the Chicken Foot. I like that they went ahead and showed a little bit of gameplay. It gave me more of a sense of, I understand what I'm looking at more than what I thought. I think that game, you could probably give a rough idea of what you'd expect from it just looking at it visually, but I think showing something that was clearly gameplay helped. Divinity looks really interesting, world building and stuff wise. I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at. I can make guesses because it's Larian, but that doesn't mean they're accurate.
Well, you know, it's funny because for me, I have thoughts, but the biggest thing is like, I didn't need anything after the logo. So like that was all I needed. Once it said Larian, like I was good. Like it was fine. I don't know. Like I like Divinity Original Sin 2. I played a lot of that. I'm probably going to play it again. But like I didn't need to. It's funny because I don't need to see gameplay of a Larian game to know I'm going to buy the Larian game. But it also left me with very little to say about Divinity.
Exactly.
But the only thing I will say, which maybe this is controversial, I thought that was a crazy fucking trailer for the Game Awards.
Dude,
and not in
I
a
was
good
surprised
way.
at
I'm gonna be real. I don't think that was an appropriate trailer to be playing at the Game Awards. Maybe I'm maybe I'm the friend that's too woke. But I was like, I don't think this is appropriate for what you're going for here.
I would say that it didn't bother me at all because I like pushing the boundary like that. But I agree that I would not be surprised to hear a chorus of people being like, that was a bit much to show during a game, an event that is streamed to a lot of.
To be clear,
people.
like I was into the trailer, like I liked it.
Yeah, same.
But there was this prevailing sense in my head of like, this is a fucking award show. Could you imagine if there was an Irreversible trailer at the Oscars? Like, imagine in front of, there's a fucking the green. Just use Irreversible again. Imagine that trailer in front of fucking Avatar Fire and Ash next to fucking Avengers Doomsday.
Like, well, and then like Killer of the Flower Moon. Like let's I mean let's put something that's a little bit more high cinema in there. But your point stands regardless.
And that's the thing. Like I know I sound like a fucking prude. I thought the trailer was cool. Like I was into it. I thought it was a weird place to put that trailer.
I will say, initially, I was like, he just said that this is a gaming's big mystery. So I was like, this has to be about the statue, right? But then as it kept going, I was like, is this Fable?
Dude, I thought it was Fable.
At the beginning, I was like, this might be Fable. Like this guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know they're making a little bit of changes. Like I know it's not exactly what I think about a Fable, but I don't think the new Fable is going to be what I think about when I think of Fable anyway, to be honest. I think that I have pretty much relegated myself to the fact that the new Fable, I just have to look at it as its own game. I don't think it's going to be fair for me to compare it to the originals. But yeah, I was like, and then shit started getting wild. I was like, this would be kind of weird if this was Fable. And then it kept going. I was like, there's no way this is Fable.
When all the actual people were walking around the stage, I was like, is this Kingdom Come?
I had a small moment of that too.
Dude,
like, are they announcing DLC?
I kind of kept it in the back of my head of like, this would be fucking incredible DLC for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
Be very, very different tonal.
It would be a fucking turn because there is no magic in that game. But like, because all the people looked like people out of KCD. So I'm like,
this is the discovery of magic in the world of KCD 2.
Could you imagine this? Oh man. But then like I said, as the trailer went on, I was like, oh, this is like, yeah, all right, I know what this is. And then obviously you see Larian. I don't know. Like, again, I don't want to sound like a prude. The trailer was fucking awesome. And like, I will, by this day one, I will get annoying about this game on this show. Like, ironically, I was for Claire Obscure and Vampire Survivors, which came to PS5 2 summers ago. It's the biggest comment that I can take from a fucking YouTube short is that I thought that was a crazy fucking place to have a man full on the whole process of him burning to death.
And like was his flesh like being fucking ripped from him initially. It was ballsy.
It's amazing. I get that this is like an adult show.
Yeah.
But I hate to sound like a fucking 1990s Republican mom, but there are kids watching this.
You fucking Tipper Gore.
The kids are having sex with prostitutes and then running them over. Like, I don't know. I don't want to be a prude. It just, that's my biggest takeaway.
I'm with you.
God,
well, on the topic of CG kind of putting me in a spot where I'm like, I want to be excited, but it's hard for my excitement to latch on to anything. Dungeons and Dragons Warlock had a cool tone to its reveal. And I mean, dude, putting Tool with some great visuals never hurts anything. That fucking, I was like, oh, okay, we got some Tool bass line going in here. And that's a sick song, My Shadow. I was like, okay. And then it didn't go anywhere, and it just was like Dungeons and Dragons Warlock, and then ended. And I was like, "There's nothing of substance here. I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at." Like, it looked cool, and I guess I'm intrigued, but also this intrigue is not going to last for another year it's going to take for you to show me anything about this again. By then, I may like what you show again, but it's not going to have anything to do with the fact that I was excited from this previous thing. It's just going to be a new thing. That was kind of ballsy to me. There's times where I feel like the industry has learned nothing from the fact that Xbox got all that backlash from having that reveal showcase that was like all CG.
Yeah.
There's times where I'm like, no one paid attention to the fact that everybody was like, but it'd be unfair to act like the majority of the Game Awards was that. But there was a lot of it for big things. And to that end, the note that I gave about Divinity not being the last thing, to Jeff's credit, every year it is something that's really the fuck far away, and it's just a CG trailer with no substance for you to get excited about outside of they're making the Elder Scrolls 6 eventually. You know?
How do you like these mountains?
Or ooh, look, a ring in the sky in the space. It's Starfield. Okay, I don't know what that means. But point being, and I know that wasn't Game Awards, but any kind of big reveal like that as being like a big thing for the ending thing is just crazy to me. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little less CGI overall. I don't have a whole lot more on my list. How do you feel about jumping over to Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight?
Yeah, let's do that.
We both kind of were like, when they initially showed it during Summer Games Fest, if I remember correctly, maybe Gamescom. I think that's what it was. One of those. I remember being like, this is a really cool idea, but I just came off of playing Lego Batman 3 and I played Lego Batman 2 last year. And so after playing that trilogy and kind of going through that, I find myself kind of loving the fact that they're taking that world and IP and idea and moving it in a very different gameplay loop. Because I think, despite the fact that I don't always love when games do this, I think it's really neat that they're actually taking this gameplay loop, changing it up, and bringing this type of game to a more open environment with this kind of Arkham City style open world Arkham, because it feels right for what's going on with this. And I think Lego needed that kind of shakeup instead of just making yet another Lego game. Not that that's a bad thing, but they made a lot of that style of Lego game. So shaking it up like they did with even like Lego Horizon, I really enjoyed. I was surprised at how fun Lego Horizon was. And if we take that with something that I have honestly a much stronger connection to, the Batman world, and you take the Lego Batman stuff, which is cute, but kind of give it a little bit more serious ability because of this new tonal shift. I don't expect it to be Arkham City, but I'm kind of excited to see what they do when they're focused in on Batman. Because even Lego Batman 2 and 3, while being really... They call them Lego Batman. They're essentially Lego DC, which, you know, they made those Lego Marvel games. For some reason, they just chose to do Lego DC under the Batman branding, because Lego Batman 3 is literally you going to all the Green Planet world, like all the Lantern planets, fighting Brainiac and doing all this shit. Like, that's not Batman. Like, it involves Batman, but he's just there. So it's kind of cool to see what they're going to do with a strictly, we're in Gotham, this is Batman, we're not worrying about Superman villains and everything. We're only going to have a few playable characters so that you can more demonstrably differentiate the play styles, which is something that's nice, because even though it's cool to have hundreds of characters you can play as in Lego Batman 3, at the end of the day, there's like 6 playable types of characters, and they just all look a little different to fit their character thing. So I know you've played some of the Lego games. How do you feel about this, man?
I'm just super into like the concept of it, like seeing like the movies and all this kind of stuff like through this lens. Seems like it'll be really fun. But yeah,
and to be fair, it is an original story. It's just has a lot of it in like moments inspired by movies, from what I understand.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems at least clear enough to me that they're like going to do things from the movies, whether that's whatever reason they give for it. That was clearly like Tom Hardy's Bane. So, like,
oh yeah. Well, and like back in the original trailer when they had the Penguin crash the car from the Batman. Yeah, but it's like, oh, that's sick. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's probably going to be Brainiac sends this Batman into these situations. Like that'll 100% be the story, unless they killed him or whatever in the game you just played. I don't know.
They don't kill anybody in the Lego games, arguably. But I mean,
yeah,
you know, he's dealt with.
Got it. All right. So they murdered that man.
Do you think it'll be Scarecrow fear toxins?
That would work. Sure. Well, no, because I guess it wouldn't be. Movies, so That'd be a little weird.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of being a reason as to why Batman's hallucinating these things.
Yeah, I mean, it would probably be something like that.
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, this is the most interested in a Lego game I've ever been. Like, I've played a lot of Lego games in my life, but I've never been super interested in them. They just kind of come.
You've never beaten one that you're aware of, or have you beaten one?
I've beaten a lot of them.
Nice.
I just beat Jurassic World recently. Actually, the Jurassic one.
Nice.
I tried to get the platinum, and I'm just like, I'm not doing this. But but yeah, I do have I did on my old account the Lego Harry Potter 1 through 7 Vita Platinum.
Sure.
That one's pretty good. So I've done a decent amount of them, but this one is this one looks. It sounds like pedantic towards the other games, but this one looks like the most gamey of all of them.
Exactly. And that's what I liked about Horizon, where I was like, oh, this is actually making the Lego games have like more involved gameplay than they typically have had.
Yeah, it's not just like pressing circle and then your guy goes doop 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 doop, and then it's like he built a fucking bridge. Like, okay,
and
cool.
don't get me wrong,
and it's fun.
I like the Lego games; they are fun, but it's nice to think, oh, okay, we can keep some of the charm of these games, but up what you get to do. They're more interactive, and that's cool. Yeah. Well, Chris, you're the resident Resident Evil fan.
Ooh, nice.
And I also think that you're a bigger Leon fan than I am. So I'm going to have you start to talk about Requiem before I give my 2 cents on it.
I think it looks fantastic. I'll be buying it. I'll be there with 3-day early access for $1,000. That's fine. I'll do that. Maybe this is a hot take. I kind of wish they reversed the roles.
Yeah?
Yeah, because like they did this already. They did this in 6. Where
I haven't played 6.
Actually, Leon was more of the horror and Chris was the action, and this fucking new Wesker's kid was the mix of them. But I think it would have been way more interesting to me for like Leon to be in the survival horror setting and this girl to be in the action.
Okay, part of the problem I have with that, from what we're seeing, right? And they could have changed this perception-wise. They could have built the characters around this, of course. First and foremost, I kind of am a little bummed that Leon's the extra character here. I know that he's like a fan favorite, but dude, you have so much lore and characters to choose from. And I get anchoring an existing character around this new one, which the new one's tied to an existing character already, but because it's like the daughter of the person. But I was like, dude, like you had so many options, and Leon's who you went with, and I know why. Everybody fucking loves Leon.
But I might be mistaken, but I've played most of them. He's in the least amount of games. He's in 4 and 6. That's it.
Well, but
and 2. Okay, 2. I forget that.
He's playable in a lot of the games. I think he's actually the character in the franchise that you play as the most. You're right. Chris is in a lot of the games.
Hot take. He's the main character.
Yeah. I'm not even, but I don't know. I'm not saying that this like should have been it, but like fuck it, Shiva would have been more interesting than Leon.
I would have shot myself on this podcast if Shiva was back.
I'm not saying for her to be the one, but you get what I'm saying. You have so many characters to choose from that it's kind of wild that you immediately go, I feel like I might like Leon.
If you're going to do action, give it to Muscle Man. Like
I would have been fine with Chris
FBI,
being that. Yeah.
CI, whatever he is. But
sure. And we haven't played as Chris since 5, right? I mean,
we
haven't. I haven't played 8, but
6. I mean 6.
Oh, but 6 you played as everybody.
7 is all Ethan. So
yeah, 7's all Ethan. 8 is all Ethan, correct?
Yeah.
I guess you don't have to say anything, but
perspective. Yeah. But I don't know. I just think that I think it just looks fantastic, and I love Leon.
Looking at the girl, the way they've chose to perceive her, I would be really surprised to see her. She doesn't strike me. She's not an Ada Wong. Like if Ada was the girl doing the action shit, I buy it all day long.
Yeah, I guess.
But this girl seems like she's meant to be like the out of her element.
She is for sure.
Yeah.
I just think like
for lack of a better way, I don't think it'll go this hardcore. I think it'll be more like 7's take on subdued horror. But I almost get like, and I wouldn't even mind this, if you kind of made her gameplay loop more of like Outlast, I'd be cool with that, because I think that that's even a stronger contrast. The thing showed her using a gun. not confidently, but I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to shoot with her. It's maybe like a James where you're not great with a gun, but you can use it. But I think it might have been actually even cooler to have Leon be hyper action, like it looks like he's going to be, and her be defenseless. Like whenever something's coming for you, you have to run and hide and play that cat and mouse game. And then you get to, but I don't know, maybe that's too much, but I think that's at least interesting. I'm glad to see that they're choosing to bifurcate this instead of doing, because like even though a lot of people loved 8, one of the things I heard was I love 8, but they're running the risk if they keep pushing in this direction of going right back to what 5 was, where it's just all action. And so I think they kind of needed to do this so that they could continue to push towards what 8's gameplay was building towards, but still come back to something that feels more survival horror in a way that 5 just doesn't. 5 does not feel like a survival horror game. And even though I never played 6, I've seen stuff of 6. 6 does not look like a survival horror game to me, but it sounds like maybe there's at least sections where they attempt it.
They are. Yeah, I don't know. I think everything you're saying is true. And I just think story structure wise, it would have been way more interesting to have Leon have to be, because to me, whatever, just like on a base level, I think it would be more interesting to see this girl have to put herself in the action scenario. And true. I think that's more interesting to watch build, because I don't think the game starts with her like toting dual wielding MP5s.
Sure.
But I think as the story goes on and she gets more comfortable, maybe after she crosses paths with Claire Redfield and whatever, like she gets more comfortable doing the action. And then by the end, it's like an action game. And like, I think that would be, not to use the term, but like a real inversion of, what you expect, where it's like, oh, Leon is actually not the action guy. And I think if you look at this as what they're clearly going to do here is try and send off Leon, I think it would be interesting for his first game and his last game to be survival horror games instead of action games.
Yeah, that would have made it for an interesting thing too. I will say one of the things that kind of does bum me out about the fact that Leon's coming back into this, whether or not this was an overt intention or even if it's actually anywhere in there, it may just be that they know fans like Leon and they like seeing him in games. So, disregard this for anybody who's a long time. I'm not saying that this is some hardcore opinion I'm right, but it does strike me a little bit as someone who's not necessarily a Resident Evil diehard in the same way you are, or I think you're at least closer to that if you don't consider yourself one. I think you do.
Pretty close.
It sort of feels to me like Capcom thinks, it feels like Leon is there to make sure they draw in anybody who might have been out for the fact that you're playing as a new character and a female. I know that sounds weird, but this feels a bit like pandering to make sure that you don't lose people from people who be like, you play as a female in this game, was a fucking Arnita Sarkeesian in this shit. What was going on? This sweet baby.
No, Grace is too hot for that.
Agreed. But you get my point. Is it almost feels like in one way it feels easy for me to be like, oh, this is just because they're not confident that people are going to track with this new character. That's one way, and that's in and of itself. It's like, he acts as a counterbalance to make sure that long-running fans get something to like. Therefore, there's less likely that the game would not do well sales-wise. But Resident Evil 7 being a complete new character, new everything, worked. So I don't think there's any reason to think it wouldn't work here again. It's just weird. I don't hate it. I was just like, of all the people, it's a little crazy that you're sending Leon back out. But you make games for people, and the people who primarily buy your game seem to really fucking like Leon. So let it keep going. But my last thing to say about that, Leon looks a little weird. There's a few camera angles where I'm like, what? Am I looking at like a 65-year-old Leon who's been trying to get like injections here and there of Botox, but he's like wrinkled in some spots, but too smooth in others? Like, what am I looking at? And his neck looks swole the fuck up. I was like, when did Leon get so ripped? Like, when did he become like fucking Corey Taylor, big ass fucking neck?
I mean, he is doing backflips off the walls.
You're right. He's jacked as shit in this game. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I feel like they were trying to make him look middle-aged, and it was just ironically not graceful at all.
He kind of looks like the way they portray Chris in 7.
Yeah.
This is weird. I don't know.
It's odd.
Very gruff, but
I think you should play.
Maybe I'll understand.
You should play 8 before this comes out.
I plan on it. I'm not. To be fair, I'm not worried about playing this game day one because I didn't play Resident Evil 7 day one. Actually, I did, but that's because it was a VR game, and I was very excited to see what they were going to do with VR. But point being, that is on my list. I don't know if it'll be January because I'm trying to get KCD 2 in there for so we can talk about it, and you can get your game back so you can play your DLC. But
so bad.
that is like a hopefully January, February at the latest style game that I kind of want to work in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem crazy because it's like an 8
It's like a 10-hour game if you know what you're doing.
Which is good. I love that. And I don't intend on playing. I don't know. Actually, we could talk more about that on something else, but maybe there's something to speed running through the games, because something I played recently that I was speed running on, I was like, I liked it in Stray as well. Maybe I kind of understand what it's like to just play through a game and be like, how quickly can I get through this motherfucker? Like, how well if I learn this?
There's something really fun about tossing on Resident Evil 2 and knowing I can see that whole game in an hour.
That's fair. All right, Chris, the next game, as we kind of start trying to wrap this up, I think the next ones will be pretty quick in my opinion. I'm super fucking excited in a way that I didn't expect. Tomb Raider coming back with not one, but 2 new games and trailers, while also bringing the style back to the original games, was an unexpected breath of fresh air for both gaming and the franchise. I was surprised by how much I was drawn into this like less grounded take on the franchise that really allows Laura to feel larger than life, like I felt like she did when I was a kid. While I enjoyed the most recent trilogy, they got worse as they kept going, but I did still enjoy them for what they were, and even appreciated the more serious tone of 2013's Tomb Raider in the wake of something like Uncharted. It's kind of nice to see this series aim to subvert most of the industry's standards now, like the tendencies that the studios go with this kind of return to classic form. In a time where we're constantly talking about like Laura Croft is like go-to like objectification of women, but she's also but she is the most badass woman at a time when people were talking about like women not getting portrayed well in games. Like, she was a sex icon, but she was also a badass. So she literally ran the gamut, and it's kind of cool. What they showed doesn't seem like it's necessarily leaning too hard in the sex icon, but I do think this Laura is prettier, and they're actually making sure to like pay attention to her figure because she's an iconic character with a certain look. And they're going back to this, like, I'm not gonna lie, dude, I was so excited to see the remake of The Legacy of Atlantis, because depending on what it does, it'll set the tone for how I feel about Catalyst. But seeing Lara Croft dual wielding pistols shooting at a fucking T-Rex again got me going.
Yeah, I agree. She looks hot. No. They look cool. I was very much into the remake, and I was like, oh, I was waiting. I wasn't sure if they were going to show it, the T-Rex, but then I'm like, you got to show the T-Rex. And then they showed the dinosaurs, and I was like, yeah, you know what you're doing.
There we fucking go. Yeah, dude. In a weird way, I was surprised to see Amazon Game Studios connected, because I thought that Embracer owned this, but I guess Embracer, whenever they went through all their shit, had to sell a bunch of shit. They must have sold that again. I didn't realize Amazon was the people who apparently bought it. I guess that's what's being said here.
Catalyst is John Garvin's new game, right? Or the other guy, Jake. Am I making that up? One of those guys, I think, went to Amazon.
Oh, no. John Garvin went to, I can't remember the name of that
Who's
studio.
the other guy?
Jake
Rocket or whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. He was at NetherRealm last I heard, but that'd be cool. I mean, gameplay wise, I quite love Days Gone. So, and he's the game director, like gameplay director, instead of the narrative, director. That'd be pretty cool. I don't mind that. But yeah, you have anything else you want to add on those?
No, just looked great.
Let me soapbox for just a minute, and then we can go on to what I think is probably the last game I have to talk about, and we can see if you have anything. The Forest 3 getting announced before Sons of the Forest even makes it to fucking console hurts my soul.
I almost messaged you about that yesterday, actually.
It looks incredible. I love that they're keeping with the crash landing start, but moving it to this kind of like futuristic setting. I think it's a cool way to spice up, because the first 2 games are much more modern time. Of course, with some crazy shit going on with them, but they're meant to be relatively modern. But I'm curious to see how moving into the futuristic thing and on this planet will shake up the formula. Also, hopefully I do get to play Sons of the Forest soon, because I was kind of worrying that I was going to have to break the PC out to do that. That said, and of course, immediately seeing this, I was like, how? But considering that Sons of the Forest was in early access, or was, first of all, announced and then didn't release, then did release in early access before finally fully releasing, I don't think there's going to be any time soon before I'm actually worried about having to make time to play this. And hopefully in the in-between, Sons of the Forest can come to console and I can drag you into playing it fresh. And maybe you'll like it more when you're not getting told what to do. Maybe not, though. Maybe not.
Yeah. I not a thing to say about this, brother. Other than it was, I thought it was insane because I'm watching this and I'm like, that's interesting. I kind of get this aesthetic, and then I saw the title and I was like, I need to know what Brett thinks about this because this doesn't make any sense to me.
It is fucking weird, and I'm excited, but there is a little bit of like they're pushing this quite a bit. They're still keeping this kind of fucked up looking body design, but now it doesn't seem to be a mutant. It's an alien. Is that a good or a bad thing? Hard to say, you know?
I mean, Sons of the Forest has good Steam reviews too.
Sons of the Forest is apparently incredible.
Yeah, I would have expected that you would do this if the game wasn't being received well, but it seems like it's being received fine. It's got very positive reviews on Steam, so...
But I mean, look, I get shaking it up. I mean, making yet another game that's just set in a normal environment, relatively like in a normal forest and just shaking up things. A third one of that's probably not going to get you too far, and it's probably boring to make but taking a lot of your design concepts and pushing them into this kind of futuristic environment where you can change things around might work well for it, but it might not. I mean, I'm excited, but I'm kind of I've decided to allow this to be excited that maybe this means Sons of the Forest is on its way to console, because I don't think they're going to skip that opportunity.
Yeah, it doesn't. But I could also just
be, I could be gaslighting myself. I could just be self-soothing, as they say. We could talk Soros, but the last game I genuinely want to talk about and really have strong opinions on, or something I want to talk about on it, is Phantom Blade Zero. But before we do that, is there anything else outside of Phantom Blade Zero that you feel like you want to cover?
I guess the only thing I want to say is that seems cool Mega Man's back. That was cool. I didn't expect to see that.
Me either. In a way, I respect it. Again, seeing Capcom kind of throw shit around like that, I'm just like, I appreciate that Capcom's very willing. Like, even last week we talked about them coming back with like Dead Rising, but going back to kind of the time limits seemingly and Frank and stuff. I was like, it's cool to see them being so willing to shoot back to the classics and be like, maybe there's still something for that, because like Dragon's Dogma wasn't a crazy sales success, but it was enough of a success, and then it became like this cult classic that they're like, fuck it, Dragon's Dogma 2. And I didn't care for Dragon's Dogma 2. From what I played, it didn't drag me in, really. But I respect that they'll go like, hey, it wasn't a sales juggernaut, but we're still going to make another one. That's fun. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. But yeah, I don't know how much to say. I don't even like Mega Man games. I just thought it was cool that it was back.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm not a huge Mega Man fan, but I like the game, so hard to say. All right, man. You want to close out on Phantom Blade?
Yeah. I mean, I guess like it sounds like a broken record, but I didn't have much to say about this game. I was kind of into it from the jump, so I was always going to give it a shot. And the trailer just looked pretty good, so I was like, yeah, this looks fucking sick. And then it comes out, April? Am I making that up?
Yeah,
May?
yeah.
April,
I think it's actually I think I may be getting it mixed up with something else, but it's definitely next year, and it looks good.
Yeah, I'll look it up while you talk.
You mentioned that you like the look of the trailer, and I agree. From the beginning, before I was actually even aware of what I was looking at, when the trailer first started, the guy with the mask on, I was like, oh, this is cool design. What's going on here? And then the combat started going, like, oh, this looks cool. And I at one point I almost said, I think this is Phantom Blade Zero, but then I don't know how to describe this, but right after that kind of unique style start, it pulled into this thing where I was like, oh, whatever this is, suddenly it's just kind of pulled in this generic Korean game look for like 30 seconds. And I was like, oh, but then it started showing the combat and stuff. And I was like, okay, this is starting to look cool again. And then it was like Phantom Blade Zero. I was like, okay, this is what I thought. But it was weird that it even had that little bit of moment where I was like, Rrr. So my kind of hope here is that the more they show, unlike Yote, I know that I'm interested, but I don't know that I'm interested to the point where I know I'm going to buy it like I was Yote. So I checked out of looking at Yote stuff because I knew I was going to get it, and I didn't see the need. Here, I do feel the need for me to see more before I get confident about wanting to buy it. Definitely after Lost Soul Aside kind of disappointed me. So what I'm curious about here, though, is whether or not the more they show, if my excitement will grow instead of wanting it like I did with Rise of the Ronin, but then it kind of waning the more they showed of it, where by the time that Rise of the Ronin came out, I was like, I don't think it looks like a bad game, but I'm not as excited as I was at the initial premise of this from how you showed it being executed. And Phantom Blade may be that.
Yeah. It seems like something I'll pick up, and like depending on how Sekiro it is, It'll depend on how much I really like it, but
That's
it looks
fair.
really cool.
Yeah.
I was into the style. But yeah, not too much. Actually, I forgot. I have to say something about one other game. If you're all good with Phantom Blade,
Go for it, man. Yeah, I'm all good.
I don't have a ton to say. It looked cool. I thought it was crazy that the old Yakuza director is just making
Yakuza.
and then called it Yakuza. Because seriously, Yakuza means, if I'm not mistaken, Yakuza means dragon. So he just called his game Gang Yakuza. And I'm like, this looks awesome. But you literally just made Yakuza and called it Yakuza, and no one's going to be able to do anything.
This man very clearly has a type of game he likes to make.
Yakuza games. Which
I don't
begs
know
the question.
I don't know why he needed to leave Sega in order to make this.
China probably gave him a lot more money.
That might be it, actually.
Because he's doing it for Netties, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. But yeah, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this looks a lot like an RGG game.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I was into it because it looks like a lot like an RGG game. But man,
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I guess the only thing we didn't talk about, and I don't have a strong opinion on it, outside of how'd you feel about Concord 2?
dude.
I want to tell you, I got into that moment where I was making fun of how the forest hurt my soul.
Concords too.
You want to know how bad it hurt my soul to hear, hey guys, this final reveal is not going to be a game that's taking years to come out. Mm-hmm. It's right now and it's ready and it's made by the people behind Titanfall 2. My heart was like, I know it's not Titanfall 3, but if we get a spiritual successor, let's fucking go. Mm-hmm. And then the gameplay started, and as soon as I saw it graphically, I was like, But I was like, maybe the gameplay's there. This is a weird mix, like fucking horses and knight armor, but guns. Okay, whatever. And then it kept going, and then I was like, I don't think that there's a single player component to this game at all. And then it kept going. I said, this is a hero shooter. And it kept going. I was like, yeah, this is just free to play. And then it said free to play, and I was like, well.
Yeah, I was watching that and I'm like, oh, you made Valorant, but bad. I mean, Valorant's not very good, but
look, I'm not a big multiplayer game guy. Clearly, we know that. I would have not had much negative to say about this game if it was the fact that it was the final game was a multiplayer game. That's fine. If the last thing shown was like Arc Raiders, I'd look at that and go, oh, that looks interesting, and someone will enjoy that, and I may even try it, but it's not something I'm hyped for. I looked at this, and I'm not even saying it's bad necessarily, but what I will say is I looked at it and I said, oh, this is generic as all get out. This looks like so many other things, but also like the great value version of them in a lot of ways. And it's probably the type of online game I like the least, which is hero shooters. So for me, it was so easy for me to be out. And I was just like, that is a crazy, wild choice for a final showing. But I keep telling myself, this game has got to be for someone, and someone was over there like, fucking finally, we get a multiplayer game to end the one last thing. But I couldn't believe
Shroud is so happy. I don't want to say anything negative. I'm happy that people are pursuing their passion. I couldn't believe that they announced 2 Concord 2s.
Yeah, had that other one that looked like it was going to be a Larian style game for a second, but then it wasn't. Is that even the game I think it is?
Bad Robot game.
Oh, yeah.
Which I was shocked that we got that announcement already.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, that's one that like I'm gonna have to see more, dog, because that was not impressive to me.
Yeah.
There's one scene where they pan over a character's face and he's got no emotions, just a deadpan, and it's like on his face for like 2 or 3 seconds. And I'm like, this does not look good. It's too long of nothing happening to this dude's face. Move forward. I mean, it's a PlayStation exclusive. I'll try it, but I don't think it doesn't look very good to me.
Well, considering the last movie I watched that J.J. Abrams was a part of was Rise of Skywalker, his name doesn't necessarily carry that much weight for me.
Well, to be fair, he doesn't have to completely erase a movie for some reason. So
that is also true. I am appreciative of that. Nor is it even obvious that he's working on it in any capacity. I'm just saying all I'm saying is that both names that they chose and both people they chose to come out with, I don't really have much love for Left 4 Dead. I don't even mean that in a bad way. I just don't have a built-in strong care for it. So that doesn't move the needle for me. The type of game that it is doesn't move the needle for me. And J.J. Abrams doesn't move the needle for me. So it's kind of lost me on all 3 fronts. But it's cool that Sony's partnering with weird games again. I'm cool with that. Like, you know, it's more games as a service trying to fill that niche. But I'd rather them do this than contract one of their internal studios out to do it. So
me too.
Fuck it, let it go.
But
all right, Chris.
Production.
Thanks for joining me for what was longer than I anticipated. Not in a bad way. I honestly enjoyed talking about the Game Awards, and I got to give Jeff a lot of credit. Not to say there wasn't moments where I was a little frustrated or things that just didn't interest me for a little too long, and there were some little moments. But considering that it's a live show, it's not pre-recorded. You can't edit your way around things necessarily. You're just going off. I was very impressed with the show, and whether or not I think that I put too much value behind what the awards are. For the people who do care, it's nice to see that there is an avenue for that to happen. And for the developers, definitely like a Sandfall, who are new, and this is a really big morale boost for them. And it is at the end of the day a big platform for people to see them and do exactly what you said, where it's like, what the fuck is a Clair Obscur? It got a Game Awards Game of the Year. Maybe I'm going to try it. Maybe it's not my type of game. And you know what? That's exactly how you get people to suddenly branch out of playing their casual games. That's exactly like me letting my friend borrow Shadow of Mordor and him being like, bro, there's games that aren't sports games. This is kind of fire.
This game doesn't even have guns in it.
Yeah. And to that end, it was, it's cool. And like, don't get me wrong, he still primarily plays casual, but every now and then Mario hits me with a, hey bro, Stellar Blade looks cool. You should play it. Hey bro, Final Fantasy 16 looks dope. Play it. Hey bro, Final Fantasy 7 was dope. Great. Now play the sequel. It's like,
play it.
I love that. That's my thing, is like seeing people kind of branch themselves in with something like this is cool. So it's nice to see that we have that little bit of an opportunity. So, but all right, Chris, thanks for joining me.
Oh yeah, brother.
We will be back, like I said, next week to talk about our games that we played in 2025, and hopefully with more 2 weeks. Yes, thank you. With more 2025 games under our belt in order to talk about, because while I never feel bad about playing the games that I want to play, the trophy competition inadvertently, it wasn't even like a choice. I kind of just drifted towards my Vita and kind of latched onto it and ended up pushing way more games aside than I intended to. And so I'm kind of trying to course correct and play a little bit more from 2025 that I wanted to play and just didn't get around to. So hopefully I've got 2 or 3 more games from 2025 to at least have a little bit more to say about what the year looked like from a gaming perspective. But I'm also excited about all the games that we played that weren't from this year that were absolute bangers. And we'll get to talking about those. So without further ado, if you want to join our patrons who went over to patreon.com/Nartec and gave us as little as $1 per month to support this show directly, which we are so thankful for. It allows us to do this show without digging into our own pockets, which makes it easier for us to keep doing it, because all we have to do is show up, talk about the things that we're passionate about, which makes this a lot easier. We don't have to stress. And that is, I can tell you right now, Chris does not need any more stress.
No, I do not.
So to that end, our patrons are making Chris's life a little bit easier day in and day out. And as a thank you for what they do for us, we shout them out at the end of every single episode. Without further ado, we would like to thank Grime Kid 1989, FR Damian Quigley, Ryan Goldner, Low Rate Nate, Spencer, Brandon Edwards, Alex, Barry Rogers, Stingray X, Matt Tubbs, Bailey Robertson, Mark Schutz, Rude Days 93, Kevin Bacon Bits, Danny Villalobos, Jehudi MD, No Fate, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, and Sean Santarud. Thanks to each and every one of you. We'll see you next time.